Kaya! A horned man screams in agony as a demonic creature with a glowing red eye holds him. An army of red-eyed undead monsters charges into a fiery, chaotic battle. A young blonde man and a blonde woman fight desperately against the overwhelming undead horde. The young man looks up in utter despair as the battle rages around him. A colossal explosion erupts, wiping out a massive section of the enemy forces. Clang! A blonde warrior clashes blades with a powerful, horned opponent. A white-haired warrior with glowing red eyes ferociously battles the horned combatant, their blades a blur of motion. Their intense clash sends sparks flying as a powerful blow lands on the horned warrior's armor. The white-haired warrior counters with a sweeping, energized slash from his purple blade. The Empire's strongest swordsman, Aides, catches his breath, acknowledging the incredible power of his opponent, the Knight of Hell. From the battlefield's haze, the ominous Death Knight appears to face him, backed by a shadowy figure. Crack! Aides' final strike shatters the horned warrior's helmet. The helmet falls away, revealing a long-haired person in dark armor underneath, the Death Knight. Ku the Death Knight grunts, their glowing red eye filled with malice. The Death Knight lifts a hand to their face, revealing a normal, glowing blue eye underneath. With a look of pure shock, the Death Knight stares ahead. Overlooking the smoldering ruins of the city, the Death Knight exhales in grim exhaustion. A disembodied voice celebrates with a clenched fist, declaring he has finally brought a cursed bloodline to its knees, and that revenge is sweet after a long wait. A tall, cloaked figure stands victoriously atop a pile of fallen soldiers holding a staff. The cloaked figure gloats about accomplishing a 1,000-year-old goal, revealing a captured red-haired man. The cloaked figure is revealed to be the laughing Arch-Lich Dorgo. The Helios Empire's emperor, Howard Adel Light, screams in grief and rage, cursing the devil who massacred his people. Dorgo mockingly finds the emperor's curse sweet and endearing. As Emperor Howard demands to know what nonsense this coronation is, Dorgo coolly asks if he is done talking yet. Dorgo flashes a peace sign, smugly boasting that he has unified the entire continent for the first time in history. Cue Emperor Howard grits his teeth, choking on his own anger and defeat. Dorgo turns to his followers, congratulating his Demon Kings and the Death Knight on a job well done. He holds out his hand and commands them to bring him the Imperial Crown. The Death Knight, flanked by the other Demon Kings, silently presents the gleaming crown. Dorgo praises the Death Knight for his loyal service and asks how he should be rewarded. The Death Knight remains utterly silent, staring intently. He continues to stand motionless, offering the crown without a word. Dorgo scoffs, dismissing the question and reminding the knight, "You are my slave." He declares that serving him is the ultimate reward as he reaches for the crown. Dorgo is startled as he goes to take the precious artifact. Bam! The Death Knight suddenly shatters the Imperial crown with a blast of dark energy. The Demon Kings react with utter shock and confusion at this sudden betrayal. Dorgo erupts in a furious torrent of crimson energy. The Demon Kings immediately surround the Death Knight, poised to strike him down. Q! The Death Knight stands his ground, grimacing as he faces down his former allies. Dorgo clutches his chest in disbelief, wondering how he was harmed through his defenses, while the Death Knight reveals this act of defiance was never his order. The Death Knight declares with newfound resolve, "I'm moving by my own will." Dorgo is aghast, insisting he erased the Knight's consciousness, but the Knight reveals he was trapped inside his own body the whole time, watching everything. A chilling vision shows his naked spirit, contorted and imprisoned within a dark, bloody void. Dorgo looks on, utterly stunned by this impossible turn of events. Dorgo recovers with a smirk, calling the Death Knight his greatest masterpiece, and graciously allowing him to vent his anger just this once. He adds a chilling condition, only until he can regain control, and orders his Demon Kings to attack. The Death Knight is wreathed in a swirling vortex of immense purple power. He unleashes his unrestrained power in a devastating, all-consuming blast. Dorgo stares in disbelief, shocked that his powerful Demon Kings were defeated in a single, overwhelming strike. Realizing the tables have turned, Dorgo prepares to unleash his final gambit. With a surge of foul green energy, Dorgo raises a massive army of the dead from the bodies of the fallen. Kia-ha-ha-ha. The newly resurrected undead horde charges forward, a sea of glowing red eyes. The Death Knight stands alone, a solitary figure against the overwhelming tide of monsters. With a simple command to stop, the Death Knight unleashes his own suffocating dark aura. His eyes glowing with purple power, he demands the complete surrender of the undead army. The approaching ghouls scream in agony as his purple energy tears them apart. Dorgo watches in absolute horror as his entire undead army is effortlessly disintegrated. The Death Knight's power manifests as a colossal devouring maw of dark energy that consumes all. Horrified, Dorgo realizes he didn't just create a powerful slave, he created a monster equal to the gods. Recovering slightly, Dorgo condescendingly tells the Death Knight he understands his fury. He smugly warns that even if this body is destroyed, he can transfer his soul to another vessel and regain control. The Death Knight reveals he spent years trapped inside his own mind, thinking only of killing Dorgo. In a flash of blue light, the Death Knight lunges forward, catching Dorgo by surprise. With pure, unadulterated hatred in his eyes, he closes in for the final blow. He launches his sword through the air as Dorgo notes the danger and prepares to dodge. The glowing blade streaks past Dorgo, who seemingly evades the attack with ease. Dorgo stands bewildered for a moment, confused by the seemingly missed attack. He lets out a relieved chuckle, mocking the knight's failed attempt. Yar, one of Dorgo's soul vessels, screams as the sword impales it, revealing the knight's true target. The Death Knight watches as a massive vortex of dark energy gathers above his sword. From the vortex, a colossal spear of pure destruction descends upon the battlefield. The spear impacts with a blinding explosion of purple energy, annihilating everything in its path. Dorgo's empty skull rolls across the scorched earth, his reign of terror finally over. The Death Knight stands over the skull and coldly tells his former master to go to hell. Emperor Howard Adelite stares out at the scene, trembling in utter disbelief. On his knees, the defeated emperor can only stammer, asking what is happening. His purpose fulfilled, the Death Knight collapses to his knees, his strength finally giving out. With his hair obscuring his face, he exhales, declaring that his long ordeal is finally over. He plants his sword in the ground before him, kneeling in a moment of solemn finality. He resolves that he must find a way to apologize to those he wronged. In a flashback to the massacre, he remembers his regret and his need to say sorry. He recalls the horrific moment he killed an innocent, his heart aching with the need to apologize. A gentle voice asks, "Damien, why are you sleeping here?" Thankful he believes he's seeing her one last time before damnation. A kind, smiling woman with brown hair and blue eyes looks down at him. Now named Damien, he asks why she looks so young. She playfully accuses him of flattering her to avoid their father's scolding. His big sister promises to cover for him and urges him to come inside before it rains. Damien watches her walk toward a familiar mansion, utterly confused by the peaceful scene. His eyes widen in shock as he remembers personally destroying this exact mansion and wonders if this is a dream. He questions his reality. Was his life as the Death Knight the dream? Or is this peaceful past an illusion? He spots a simple, thorny stick lying on the ground. Picking up the stick, he approaches a large boulder, noting that the stick feels just right in his hand. With a casual swing, he channels the familiar, immense power of his former life. The simple stick makes contact with a solid rock. Damien is startled by the result of his own casual action. He stumbles back as power radiates from the point of impact. The massive boulder cracks and then shatters into 1,000 pieces from the effortless tap. Kwahahaha. An unhinged, pained laugh escapes him as the reality of his power in this new life sinks in. He crouches over the rubble, panting as he grapples with his impossible situation. Q. He clutches his shirt in anguish as the rain begins to fall. Overwhelmed by emotion, with tears streaming down his face, Damien accepts the unbelievable truth. He has truly returned to the past. His sorrow turns to resolve as he recalls being called insane, now realizing he has a talent. He remembers his father's fury over a bar commotion, sarcastically labeling his own past self's talent as sullying the family's honor. Another memory surfaces, a man bursting in, questioning why Damien assaulted the young master of Lianglime March. Damien inwardly reveals his motive. He did it to protect his sister. A horse-drawn carriage crosses a scenic bridge, transitioning the memory. His sister weeps in the carriage, being taken away by a roughneck, as Damien laments his talent for ruining his family's future. In another painful memory, his mother desperately asks why he used the family land as collateral for a loan. Damien relives the silent shame, a tear tracing a path down his cheek. His furious father roars at him to leave. Damien walks out, leaving his defeated father to stew in his despair. A voice calls his name Damien as he departs. His sister stops him, offering a pouch of money for his journey. She forces a smile, begging him to be happy, and the memory of her kindness stabs at his heart. He remembers thinking how his actions had ruined her life. He runs from the house, leaving his heartbroken sister to watch him go. He recalls the day he fled, as if escaping his family. The memory of his flight brings a fresh wave of tears, as he remembers finally understanding guilt and shame. Kneeling in the field, he wonders aloud how he managed to come back to the past. He had wished to apologize, but to actually return to this time seems impossible. Gazing at the heavens, he questions if this is some kind of divine miracle. He looks at his own hand, still struggling to believe this is real. He realizes that in his youth, performing even a simple technique was a struggle. He recalls a powerful hammer skill from his past life, wave breaking. In a flashback, a knight uses the technique, shattering the ground to fend off a demonic foe. He remembers being that knight and obtaining this powerful skill. The technique was his reward for defeating a notorious enemy known as the Castle Wall Destroyer. His thoughts are interrupted by a young servant boy running toward him. As the huffing boy approaches, Damien recognizes him as a family servant, but struggles to recall his name. After a moment's thought, he tentatively guesses the servant's name is Victor. The servant, Victor, urgently asks why he hasn't returned as Lady Louise instructed. Victor warns him that the patriarch is furious, but a confused Damien asks what he did wrong. Stunned, Victor asks if he is genuinely unaware of his own transgressions. Damien's blank expression confirms he has no idea what's happening. An enraged roar of "you bastard" erupts from the Haxon Viscounty mansion. Inside, Damien is startled as a hand swiftly draws a sword. His father, Paul, slams the sword down, pinning Damien to the floor by his hair. Paul glares with furious, glowing red eyes, the sword's tip inches from Damien's face. In a flash, Damien sees the scene as it originally happened, his mother and sister trying to restrain his enraged father. Realizing he's returned to this exact pivotal moment, Damien stands calmly as his father threatens to kill him. As his sister and mother plead with his father to be rational, Damien quietly reflects. The faces of his family, Father Paul, Mother Marilda, and Sister Louise, flash before his eyes. "I miss this so much," he murmurs, his quiet sentiment leaving his enraged father utterly confused. Ahem, his father Paul, regains his composure and angrily demands an excuse for his behavior. "I have none," Damien replies, shocking his father, who expected a stream of denials. Paul is left speechless by his son's direct and unexpected answer. His father marvels at the change, remembering a boy always full of pathetic excuses, while Damien admits the words still sting. Damien accepts full responsibility for sullying the Haxon honor, admitting it is entirely his fault. Bowing his head in contrition, Damien vows, "I will make up for it," leaving his father dumbfounded. Damien quietly states, afterwards, as he turns toward the door, leaving his father to watch in stunned silence. With a confident smirk, Damien declares he will accept his punishment when he returns. His family stands in stunned silence, utterly bewildered by his sudden change in demeanor. His father, Paul, wonders if Damien hit his head during the fight, while his mother and sister look concerned. The scene transitions to the clear, sunny skies above the merchant city of Landwork. A wide shot reveals the sprawling medieval city of Landwork. As they arrive at a heavily guarded building, Victor informs Damien that they've reached their destination. Victor nervously asks Damien if he's really going in, warning him of rumors that a dangerous syndicate supports the people inside. Damien tells Victor to go back if he's scared, but Victor frantically refuses to abandon him. Looking back at his worried servant, Damien vows to properly make up for his past mistakes. Victor watches him go, anxiously hoping that things will turn out well. Damien walks alone across the courtyard, a golden symbol glinting in the sunlight. He reflects that if a god has truly given him this second chance, he cannot bear to hurt his beloved family again. He grimly approaches the building, remembering his past self's talent for ruining his family's future. Two rough-looking guards, one toying with a knife, notice his approach with suspicion. The two thugs confront him, demanding to know why he's back, and warning him to stay away. Damien thinks to himself that while it's been a long time, these men seem strangely familiar. He calmly states that he has returned to apologize to the owner for his actions last time. The two thugs are left speechless by his unexpected words. Pieft. The long-haired thug bursts out laughing, mocking the noble's sudden apology before agreeing to inform the boss. An unseen figure notes that while Damien was said to be a roughneck, he seems more composed than expected. The thugs begin to taunt him, mentioning his sister's beauty and wondering if she's the only useful thing about his family. One of the men grabs Damien's chin, saying he suddenly feels like accepting the apology. Pwaha! Licking his knife, the thug offers to accept if Damien introduces his sister, while the other laughs. In a flash, Damien's hand moves, leaving the thug baffled. Damien now holds the knife, realizing a simple apology won't work as the enraged thugs demand their weapon back. The thug in the red bandana furiously demands to know what he's doing. Whack! Damien lands a swift, brutal backhand on the thug's face. Kayak. The thug goes flying from the force of the blow. As his partner collapses, Damien tells the remaining thug that he'll show him what the Haxon family's son is truly like. A dark, demonic aura flares around Damien as his eyes glow with crimson intent. Watching from a safe distance, Victor stammers in disbelief. Peeking around a corner, Victor screams in terror, having thought Damien was going to make things right peacefully. A blood-curdling scream echoes from the building. Victor hides as passersby overhear the fight, worriedly thinking of his young master. The remaining thug threatens Damien, who coolly tells him to finish what he started. The thug reveals a snake tattoo, boasting that no one messes with the Black Snake Gang. The name sparks a memory, and Damien finally understands the situation. He recalls the Black Snake, a criminal organization that was expanding its influence during this time. He remembers that this was the bar where he got into a fight after complaining about their overpriced food. The memory of a fist hitting his face flashes through his mind. He relives the humiliation of being beaten and mocked while begging them to stop. With a cold smirk, Damien notes that he's the one who should be getting an apology, confusing his opponent. The thug warns him not to expect mercy just because he's a noble. Hiya! With a roar, the thug brings his sword down on Damien. Damien effortlessly sidesteps the attack and trips his opponent. The thug slams face first into the dirt with a painful thud. Cough cough. The thug sputters, trying to recover from the fall. Damien seizes the man's head, his eye glowing with menace, as he admits that simply killing them isn't enough. With bloodlust in his eyes, he declares he will endure this for the sake of his family. The thug begs him to wait as a blood-curdling scream fills the air. The two thugs lie defeated on the ground as Damien stands over them. A voice from inside wonders who the hell that bastard is. 4 more Black Snake members emerge with swords drawn, surprised to find him. The leader asks if Damien is from a rival organization and demands to know where he's from. Damien says he came to apologize, but now realizes he is the one owed an apology and demands to see the owner. The gang leader scoffs at his nonsense and threatens to beat the answers out of him. Get him, the leader commands, pointing with his snake-tattooed hand. As 3 men charge him with swords, Damien sighs, finding the situation bothersome. With blinding speed, Damien weaves through their attacks, effortlessly disarming them. Huff, huff. The men scream in pain on the ground while their shocked leader stammers in disbelief. Damien pants, annoyed that his younger body is already tired from such a small fight. The terrified leader quickly apologizes and offers to surrender, but Damien asks if he wants forgiveness. Before the man can react, Damien lunges forward, his face a mask of shadow. He lands a devastating blow on the gang leader. The scene shifts to inside the bar, where patrons are casually drinking and talking. The camera pans across the tavern's patrons, who are oblivious to the events outside. The beaten leader stares in disbelief, realizing Damien went too hard. The leader looks down to find the thug's knife pressed against his own throat. T-esque. Damien coldly tells him he should have listened when he was being nice. Damien kicks the tavern door open, sending the defeated gang leader flying inside. He wipes the bloody knife on his sleeve, his silent entrance silencing the room. A mother screams for her child to run as the patrons flee in terror. Damien walks into the now empty bar, declaring the nuisances are gone. The bar owner, Anderson Holm, appears on an upper landing, demanding to know what the noise is and where his guards went. Damien calmly informs the owner that he dealt with the men outside, leaving him stunned. Anderson recoils in shock, realizing this man defeated members of the Black Snake. Anderson demands his identity, and Damien introduces himself, which the owner recognizes as the Haxan Viscounty. Damien confirms his identity and states he's there to receive an apology, not make a mess. He explains that he's here because the bar is overpriced and Anderson's men beat him up for complaining. He continues, explaining that the incident ruined his reputation, branding him a drunkard. Because of that, Damien concludes with cold fury, his family lost too many things. Anderson scoffs at the notion of loss, mockingly asking if he means honor and claiming he's too old to care. The owner sneers, adding that he's heard the Haxan Viscounty has no honor left to lose anyway. Anderson demands Damien stop playing games and pay for messing up his business. With a battle cry, the owner leaps from the balcony to attack Damien. Damien lunges forward, vowing that Anderson too shall pay for what he said. His eyes glowing with a purple aura, Damien prepares to strike with the knife. A cloaked figure with a dark aura suddenly appears, blocking Damien's attack and shocking Anderson with its power. Damien lands on the floor, surprised by the sudden intervention of the powerful newcomer. Anderson smugly greets the hooded man, Sir Ted, who arrived just in time. Damien realizes this hired muscle is far too skilled for a simple bar. Damien questions why a knight would be in a place like this, staring down the hooded figure's glowing red eyes. An infographic explains the 3 ranks of knights: trainee, apprentice, and official. The text clarifies that official knights are those capable of freely using aura. These knights are powerful enough to cut down mountains with a single strike. They are described as transcendent beings who can slice through castle walls like paper. Koo-ha-ha-ha! Hearing this, the bar owner, Anderson, bursts into maniacal laughter. Anderson boasts that Ted is an apprentice knight close to the Black Snake's boss, declaring Damien is good as dead. Damien quietly processes the new information. His opponent is an apprentice knight. Damien smirks, realizing he sensed the man's faint aura, while the hooded swordsman recoils in shock, wondering how he was detected. Damien thoughtfully strokes his chin, pondering why such a skilled individual would be working in a place like this. A mustached man explains to the swordsman that the boy is a talentless knight apprentice and asks how much it would cost to kill him. Enraged by the repeated insult of apprentice, the hooded swordsman grits his teeth and postpones the discussion. Tack, he kicks off the wooden floor, launching himself forward. Vowing to rip apart Damien's mouth first, the hooded swordsman leaps through the air with his sword drawn. His blade stops just inches from Damien's face, who remains perfectly calm and composed. With a single motion, Damien parries the blow with a knife, sending the stunned swordsman crashing to the ground. The swordsman acknowledges Damien's skill for an apprentice, noting his wide movements are deceptive to his sharp attacks. With glowing blue eyes, the hooded swordsman prepares to unleash his true power. He lunges with the glowing blade, but Damien gracefully sidesteps the powerful swing. Panting, Damien realizes his new body is already at its limit, and decides he must focus on building his stamina first. Furious, the swordsman calls him a brat, and challenges him to dodge the next, more powerful attack. He channels a massive amount of glowing blue energy into his sword. Leaping high into the air, the swordsman brings his weapon down, unleashing a devastating secret technique. A brilliant beam of energy plunges directly towards Damien's head. In a dark flashback, a blood-soaked killer known as the Phantom Assassin wonders who he is, and questions the point of slaughter if it isn't fun. The assassin confronts a horned warrior, warning him to leave if he doesn't wish to die. Surrounded by corpses, the horned warrior stands his ground defiantly. The assassin's 2 selves merge in his mind as he resolves to kill another who fails to understand. With his piercing red eye, the assassin reveals his secret. At his level, he can see that human bodies are mostly water. He unleashes his signature move, the secret technique, Blade of Death. Task. The horned warrior is instantly bisected, and the assassin laments that he should have just left. The assassin turns back, a look of surprise on his face. The 2 halves of the horned warrior begin to writhe and bubble, pulling themselves back together. Reformed, the warrior mocks the assassin's shock and asks if he thought he was an undead. The assassin is suddenly enveloped in a swirling vortex of energy, caught in his opponent's technique. But as the horned warrior watches, the assassin turns the technique back on him, leaving the warrior to ask, "What?" With blood streaming from his eyes, the assassin laughs manically, demanding to know how the warrior used his secret technique. Back in the present, the hooded swordsman screams in terror, realizing what has happened. He collapses to the floor, dead, a fatal wound gushing blood from his chest. Damien reflects that after becoming a Death Knight, he gained the ability to absorb his enemy's skills and make them his own. Hike. From the balcony above, the mustached man shrieks in pure terror. He trembles uncontrollably, staring down in abject fear at the scene below. He and his two henchmen crash to their knees, and the man slams his head to the ground, apologizing for dishonoring the great Haxan. As a form of monetary consolation, he offers Damien a massive chest of gold and jewels, asking if it's enough. Damien notes he only wanted an apology but accepts the treasure, saying he'll let it slide, much to the man's relief. Who? Damien calls for Victor, who peeks around a doorway, startled by his master's voice. In disbelief, Victor wonders when Damien learned such incredible sword techniques, something he never would have imagined. The mustached man and his goons bow deeply as Damien and Victor leave, wishing them a safe journey. As they walk away, Victor marvels at their newfound fortune, while the mustached man watches them go, his expression hardening. Seething with rage, the man vows to get his money back by contacting the boss of the Black Snake. He turns, startled by a sudden, chilling presence behind him. Kua. Damien, using the blade of death, slices off the man's ear as punishment, remarking that the money almost made him forget. Cool. Damien leans in with a final, chilling warning to deliver to the Black Snake. Stay away from his family. Q clutching his bleeding head. The man snarls that Damien won't get away with this. As the sun sets, Damien and Victor walk away down the now quiet street. They walk past the defeated man's body, and Damien acknowledges the grim reality of his actions. Looking toward the setting sun, Damien reflects on the second chance he's been given. He vows not to disappoint his family anymore and tells an eager Victor that it's time to go home. The scene transitions to the magnificent Leon Bloom March Manor under a fiery sunset. A woman whispers to her brother that pain always follows love. A man on a couch asks what they're talking about, wondering if the serious-faced man is heading to battle. With a sinister smirk, the brother declares he is going to find love. The story returns to Viscount Haxan's estate on a bright, sunny day. Yawn, Damien stretches, remarking on his good night's sleep as Victor follows behind him. Victor complains he was too worried to sleep, but Damien calmly asks if everything didn't work out in the end. Damien explains that while their plan changed, they got paid, and more importantly, the rumor of his power will now protect their family's reputation. As Damien explains how this will improve his reputation, Victor is surprised by his master's sudden self-awareness. Victor raises his concern, reminding Damien that he didn't just rough up gang members, but also their hired apprentice knights. Damien dismisses the threat, confident the Black Snake gang wouldn't dare attack a noble family, vowing to stop them if they try. Changing the subject, Victor asks his young master when he learned to use the sword so skillfully. Damien nervously claims he just trained occasionally, an answer that Victor finds highly suspicious. Suddenly, a furious voice bellows his name. Damien! His enraged father, Paul, storms down the hall demanding to know where he was yesterday. Paul grabs him by the collar, accusing him of causing trouble again, as his wife's voice calls out. Damien calmly reassures his confused father that he handled everything and instructs Victor to show him the proof. Victor reveals a bag overflowing with gold and a land deed, leaving his parents utterly gobsmacked. Holy money! Damien claims the tavern owner gave him the money as an apology for a math error, and his mother realizes they can now pay their debts. His father asks if he can truly believe him, and his mother, overjoyed, insists it must be true. Damien puts a startled Victor on the spot, pressuring him to confirm the story with a pointed smile. A nervous Victor confirms the story, and his parents, now convinced, finally believe him. As his parents express their pride, Damien smiles, basking in the warmth of their approval. Ha! A halo of light bursts through the trees as Damien begins his training. He pushes himself, running along the edge of a rugged cliff. He stops to catch his breath, panting heavily against a tree. He laments his body's weakness, frustrated that he can't accomplish his goals in his current state. Thankfully, he thinks, he managed to acquire a solution, a glowing purple potion. He examines the mysterious potion, wondering about its nature. He remembers it's a stamina-boosting tonic from the Alchemy Academy, a valuable prize from his victory. He ponders the name Alchemy Academy, recalling they're a group renowned for making powerful tonics. He remembers that their legendary tonics are as valuable as gemstones. Without hesitation, he downs the expensive potion in a field. Phew! A surge of powerful energy courses through him as he exclaims how potent the tonic is. He resolves to build up his stamina to quickly return to the formidable level he achieved in his past life. A memory of a skeletal figure named Dorgo emerges, waving cheerfully. He remembers the future threat. Dorgo will unleash an army of undead upon the world in just a few years. Filled with grim determination, he vows to gain the strength to kill Dorgo before that terrible future arrives. Only by stopping Dorgo, he muses, can he truly protect his family's happiness. As he sprints off to continue his training, he makes a vow. This time, he will kill his enemy for sure. The scene shifts to the Black Snake's ominous hideout and landwork. Inside, a man picks his teeth, dismissing someone as useless. His underlings stand over the defeated Ted, asking their boss if they should get him medical treatment. The Black Snake's boss, Cedric Walker, coldly orders them to forget it and just dump him. A subordinate questions the order, but Cedric confirms it, telling them to dump Ted somewhere. Kicking a rat aside, he declares that disposable mercenaries are easy to replace with enough money. Suddenly, Cedric stops short, shocked to see the supposedly defeated Ted standing behind him. Looking down on him, Cedric mockingly asks Ted if he still has the strength to stand. He patronizingly offers to rehire the Furious Knight if he gets treated. Enraged by the insult, Ted screams and lunges at Cedric with his sword. But before his attack can land, Ted is suddenly ensnared by spiky tendrils of dark magic, stopping him in his tracks. WH. What the? He screams, horrified as the shadowy power completely envelops him. A new, hooded figure steps out of the darkness, asking Cedric if the Black Snake's boss can be the first target for his contract. Of course, Cedric coolly replies, giving the assassin permission to demonstrate his skills while Ted struggles and screams to be released. The hooded figure mumbles a strange, indecipherable incantation under his breath. Ted screams in agony, his face contorted in terror as the dark magic intensifies around him. Hordes of ghostly shadow monsters with single eyes and gaping mouths burst from the magic, swarming the terrified Ted. One of the spectral creatures looms over Ted, its ethereal form dripping as he stares up in utter horror. A demonic face with glowing red eyes sneers as Ted begs for his life before a shadowy maw lunges to consume him. The dark energy erupts, violently devouring the helpless mercenary in a maelstrom of purple power. Kua's final scream echoes as his lifeless body crumples to the floor. Cedric Walker watches the shadowy remnants dissipate, remarking on how disgusting it was. The hooded figure asks if he is satisfied, and Cedric agrees, but requests a cleaner job next time. The figure asks about his next contract, and Cedric explains he needs him to deal with a noble who harmed their organization. With a vile, drooling grin, Cedric orders the assassin to make the noble suffer, promising a bigger reward for more damage. Cedric gives the hooded man a bag of coins as an advance payment. With a stitched face and glowing purple eyes, the assassin smiles cruelly and vows to handle it. Elsewhere, Damien pants heavily, waking from what appears to have been a nightmare. He pushes through a grueling workout, his body straining under the heavy weight on his back. He lands hard on the ground after a jump, kicking up dust with the force. Damien flexes, pleased that the supplement is working and his stamina has increased dramatically in just a few days. He reflects on the peaceful days, wondering why the Black Snake gang hasn't come for him yet. Suddenly, he hears a rustle in the bushes and turns, realizing with a start that he's not alone. He clenches his fist in fury, thinking the Black Snake bastards have finally shown up. With glowing red eyes, Damien lunges and grabs the person by the throat. He's shocked to see his younger brother, Abel, who chokes out his name in terror. Damien pins his stunned brother to the ground. Ouch! His younger brother, Abel Haxon, sits up and comments on Damien's new strength, saying he nearly snapped his neck. A flash shows a vision of a bloody, deceased body, hinting at a terrible outcome Damien fears. Back in reality, Damien offers a hand to his brother, apologizing and saying he didn't mean to hurt him. Abel stares intently at his brother's hand, his expression serious and questioning. Abel gets up on his own, stating that he's not there for an apology. He confronts Damien, saying their father told him about the bar incident, but he also heard there was a fight and people were injured. Abel's eyes narrow with suspicion as he accuses Damien of lying to their family. Damien simply smiles and confirms it's true. He did it himself. Abel angrily refuses to believe him, shouting that Damien can't fight and must have hired someone, vowing that he won't be fooled. He scolds his brother, telling him to stop doing things that could look bad for the family and reminding him how often they've cleaned up his messes. Damien gently places a hand on his brother's head, quietly saying his name. He acknowledges Abel's diligence, But as he tries to reassure him, Abel is shocked that he can't budge his brother's hand. "Don't worry," Damien says with a calm smile. "Nothing bad will happen now, just as a servant is heard calling for the young masters." A servant runs toward them, panting that there's bad news. The servant arrives and shouts, "Bad news," leaving the two brothers confused. They rush down a long hallway toward a set of doors. Damien throws the doors open, with Abel right behind him. Inside, their parents are sitting with a smirking guest, who immediately calls out Damien's name. The guest calmly takes a sip of tea, casually asking, "Oh, you're here." He explains to the Viscount that he was just recounting the events of the last banquet, apologizing for the surprise visit. Damien glares, recognizing the visitor as Erwin Lionbloom, who smirks back and asks if he remembers what happened. In a flashback, a voice screams, "What did you say?" under an ornate chandelier. The flashback shows Damien trying to apologize to Erwin, who seems to have taken offense while others gossip in the background. In the flashback, Damien furiously confronts Erwin, accusing him of insulting his sister, but Erwin mockingly dismisses him as drunk. Snatch. As Damien grabs him, a startled Erwin shouts in surprise. Erwin sneers, tauntingly asking what Damien will do about it before insulting him. Back in the present, Damien's eyes glow as he recalls his past failure, realizing he fell for Erwin's provocation. The memory continues as Damien, enraged, throws a punch that sends Erwin flying. Erwin crashes to the floor from the force of the blow. His face is bruised, and his expression is one of pure shock and anger. In the present, Erwin smirks, noting it was strange for a skilled knight to be hit by Damien, revealing it was his true goal. Erwin coyly asks what they should do now, adding that he has always admired Miss Louise. As Damien's father demands to know his meaning, Erwin asks for their permission. With a lecherous grin, Erwin formally requests to marry Louise. The entire Haxon family is utterly shocked by his audacious demand. Damien realizes Erwin is once again taking advantage of their family's poverty, just as he did in the past life. His father, Paul, stares daggers at Erwin and flatly refuses his request. Paul explains that Louise is already engaged, but Erwin dismisses this, threatening the Haxon family with his own family's wrath over the insult. He gives them an ultimatum: face the consequences or give him Louise. Paul agonizes over the decision, knowing he can't let a lecherous bastard take his daughter, despite the Lionbloom family's power. Footsteps approach as Damien's sister Louise arrives with him and Abel. Louise enters the room, her expression calm and resolute. Her family protests in disbelief, with Paul calling her name and Abel insisting she shouldn't have to fix Damien's mistake. Damien sadly places a hand on his sister's shoulder. With a gentle smile, Louise says she's okay and will go with Sir Erwin, causing Damien to lament that his actions led to this again. Erwin smirks, his plan having succeeded perfectly. Praising Louise's wise choice, Erwin picks up his sword from the table. As he prepares to leave, he tells Louise he will send a formal request to discuss the details. Damien's eyes burn with rage as Erwin walks past him. Erwin mockingly asks Damien if he should call him brother-in-law, enraging Damien, who knows he has come to ruin his sister's life again. "What did you say?" Erwin taunts, only to be cut off as Damien smashes his fist into his face. As blood spatters from the blow, Damien thinks that this time he is fighting for his sister and his family. Damien follows up with a powerful kick to the fallen Erwin. With his fist raised, Damien fiercely declares that Erwin can't have his sister. He lands on his feet, poised and ready for a fight. In another memory, a servant announces the arrival of Lady Louise and Sir Erwin, and a younger Damien rushes excitedly to greet his sister. He peeks around a corner, thrilled to see his sister after a long time. His joy vanishes as his eyes widen in horror at what he overhears. Kayak. He witnesses Erwin grabbing a terrified Louise by the hair, berating her for wanting to go home. Erwin cruelly calls her family insect-like and demands to know why she dare think of leaving him. He throws Louise to the floor, sarcastically calling her "my love." Leaning over her, Erwin vows to educate her so she never disobeys him again. Kachak. The door bursts open, interrupting Erwin's tirade. Peeking in, Damien is horrified by the scene of his abused sister. He collapses against the doorframe, crushed by the guilt that his actions led to Louise being taken. His face contorts with absolute rage as he seethes Erwin Lionbloom's name. Back in the present, Damien raises his fist, thinking, "Too bad, you bastard." The scene returns to the present, with Erwin sprawled on the floor and the family looking on in shock. Alerted by the crash, two armored men burst into the room. They find their master on the ground and shout his title in alarm. Recognizing them as Erwin's escort guards, they draw their swords and angrily demand to know if Damien hurt him. Getting to his knee, Erwin grabs his sword and growls, "You dare!" He glares at Damien with pure fury, enraged that he has been struck in the face for a second time. Damien's parents react with absolute shock and terror to his violent outburst. Enraged, Erwin glares at Damien, declaring he must truly want to die. The escort guards try to de-escalate, telling Erwin to calm down and let them handle it since people are watching. With a menacing snarl, Damien orders them all to move. One of Erwin's guards lunges forward, vowing to deal with the rude bastard himself. Crash! The guard is violently thrown aside, smashing into a pillar before he can act. His fist crackling with dark energy, Damien glares and repeats his command, "I said move!" Peeking from the doorway, Abel and Louise watch the escalating confrontation with fear. Erwin slowly rises, asking Damien Haxon how he plans to resolve this situation. Louise worries that after this, Erwin will never leave Damien alone. Louise rushes forward, pleading for them to stop, but Damien holds up a hand, blocking her path. Damien calmly reassures his sister that he will handle it, telling her to stop sacrificing herself for him. Stepping in front of Louise, Damien looks Erwin in the eye and challenges him to a duel. Erwin asks what he means by a duel, and Damien proposes a swordsmanship match. If Erwin wins, Damien will obey him, but if Damien wins, Erwin must forget everything. Erwin scoffs at the offer, pointing out that there's no benefit for him since Louise has already agreed. Damien smirks, accusing Erwin of twisting things and asking if he's scared to lose to him. Erwin seethes, thinking Damien is an arrogant bastard who got lucky, but realizes this is a perfect opportunity to make him pay. With a cruel, malicious grin, Erwin vows to use this duel to cripple Damien and take his sister, formally accepting the challenge. The scene shifts to the estate's courtyard as the sun begins to set. Their mother worries, asking Paul if they should intervene, but he says Damien must have a plan, otherwise they can only hope for a miracle. Abel confronts his father, telling him not to hope for a miracle and brandishing his sword at Erwin. Abel explains that Erwin is already at the level of an official knight, and there's no way Damien can possibly beat him. Erwin taunts Damien, asking how he'll fight without a sword, but Damien coolly tells him not to worry. With a confident smirk, Damien reveals a dining fork, declaring it's more than enough to handle Erwin. Stunned, Erwin can only say, "A fork?" as the entire Haxon family looks on in disbelief and Louise faints. Wahaha! Erwin bursts into hysterical laughter at the absurd challenge. Convinced Damien has lost his mind from fear, Erwin vows not to go easy on him and charges forward. Damien casually kicks Erwin's sword aside, effortlessly dodging the initial thrust. Erwin is stunned, wondering how he dodged the attack. Realizing his opponent is serious, Erwin channels a powerful red aura into his sword. He unleashes his family's signature technique, Fierce Roaring Lion Sword. The powerful, fiery attack blasts across the courtyard. Hoo! After the dust settles, Damien stands unharmed in a crater, catching his breath. Erwin and his guards are shocked, completely baffled as to how he survived unscathed. In disbelief, Erwin realizes that in a single moment, Damien dodged all the basic moves of his technique. Damien reflects that while his training helped, his true advantage is having perfectly analyzed the Leon Bloom family's swordsmanship. He remembers fighting Erwin's much stronger brother, Michael Lion Bloom, before his regression. Damien looks at Erwin with contempt, telling him he's much weaker than his brother. Confused by the statement, Erwin can only wonder what he means. Enraged, Erwin dismisses the dodge as luck and channels his aura, preparing an attack that Damien knows will be hard to avoid. As Erwin lunges with his aura-enhanced blade, Damien decides to use the Sword Saint technique. A brilliant explosion of energy erupts as their techniques collide. Louise and Abel watch the intense clash with wide, astonished eyes. What? Erwin is frozen in shock. His attack completely stopped in its tracks. With impossible precision, Damien has caught the blade of Erwin's sword between the tines of his fork. Damien prepares to counterattack with his secret move, Countless Thunder Shadow Revelation. Lunging forward with his fork, Damien bids a swift goodbye. He lands a critical blow to Erwin's chest. In a flash of fury, Damien lunges forward with a fork, ready to end the threat. A quick flashback shows the Haxon family and Erwin's guard reacting with shock to Damien's victory. The decisive moment is replayed as Damien holds the fork to a bloodied and terrified Erwin. Ah, Erwin's scream echoes again as he is completely overpowered. The motion is repeated as Damien says, "Bye," driving his point home. As the decisive blow connects, Damien's family watches in a mixture of awe and utter shock. As his family and guards watch in utter disbelief, one of Erwin's men screams his young lord's title. With blood on its tines, Damien holds the fork to Erwin's throat, stopping him cold. Ah, Erwin collapses to the ground, screaming in sheer terror. Damien thinks that killing him wouldn't be enough, but for his family's sake, he'll let it slide this once. Standing over his cowering opponent, Damien asks if there's any problem with him being declared the winner. With the duel settled, Damien stares down at Erwin and coldly orders him to get lost. The following day, the Haxon family eats together in a quiet, peaceful atmosphere. After thanking them for the meal, Damien stands and announces he's leaving for morning training. The family sits in a tense silence as they watch Damien leave the dining room. Damien's mother turns to her husband, asking if he isn't going to question Damien about what happened. Abel mutters in disbelief about his brother's sudden transformation as his mother points out his shock, urging Paul to ask. Paul silences the discussion, stating that they shouldn't press Damien and that he will tell them when he is ready. His wife calls his name worriedly as he tells Abel to get himself together. Internally, Paul admits his curiosity but is overwhelmed by a chilling fear, thinking his son has become scary. Damien prepares for his workout by strapping 10-kilogram endurance training sandbags to his ankles. As he heads for the door, Louise calls out his name, stopping him. He turns to see his sister holding a weapon and expresses his relief that she is still there. Louise starts to ask about yesterday, but Damien interrupts, realizing he must apologize. He bows deeply, apologizing for acting recklessly and causing her trouble, leaving Louise surprised. As he vows to be more careful, she quickly tells him that's not what she meant to talk about. With a gentle touch to his shoulder, Louise simply says, "Thank you." She admits she was secretly terrified and that her heart was screaming no, even as she agreed to go with Erwin. Damien listens intently, finally understanding his sister's true feelings. Louise recalls how she felt both sorry for him and glad that he stood up to protect her. Smiling through tears of gratitude, she is visibly relieved and happy. Damien looks at her warmly and thanks her for all this time. Confused by his words, she questions him, but he just dismisses it and turns to leave. Louise calls out to him one last time, telling him to take something with him. Back in the present, Damien holds his father's sword and thinks, "Thank you, father." She presents him with a large warhammer, explaining their father wanted him to have it for training. Damien is stunned as Louise relays their father's message, that he loves him very much. Louise's expression turns stern, channeling their father as she scolds Damien for using a fork and to remember his station. Now holding a fine sword, Damien accepts the gift with a confident smirk. Meanwhile, Paul looks at the sword in confusion, wondering what the strange breeze he just felt was. That night, a sinister purple aura snakes its way across the lawn of the Haxon estate. Yawn! One of the guards at the front gate is bored, and his partner tells him to stop. An eye peers from the darkness, having sensed something unusual. The purple aura coalesces into the shape of a cloaked, shadowy figure. The shadow silently glides through a hallway, its dark energy swirling around a lit candle. The presence enters Louise's room, where she lies fast asleep. The cloaked figure stands menacingly over Louise's bed. The intruder, a man with a scarred face and glowing eyes, grins lecherously, remarking on her beauty. Here on a request from the Black Snake, the man reaches for Louise, considering her an unexpected prize. "The hell are you doing?" Damien appears in the doorway, armed and ready to fight. The intruder, having sensed a strange energy, is confronted by Damien, who remains silent. The intruder is baffled, wondering why his sleep magic failed on Damien and how he approached completely undetected. The cloaked intruder unleashes a powerful blast of purple energy. Unfazed, Damien effortlessly deflects the magical attack with his sword. Stunned by the counter, the intruder demands to know who Damien is. Damien retorts that it's his house, prompting the intruder to wonder if he's facing Damien Haxon. With glowing eyes, Damien fiercely demands the intruder identify himself and reveal what he did to Louise. A voice from outside shouts, asking about the commotion coming from young Lady Louise's room. Tisk, the intruder hears barking and realizes the servants have been awakened by the noise. Realizing he's out of time, the intruder decides it's time to leave before more people arrive. Damien yells for him to stop, as the intruder dissolves into a shadowy form to escape. The formless shadow zips out through the window and into the night. Damien watches him flee, wondering if he got away, but then senses a familiar presence. His eyes widen in surprise as he recognizes the lingering energy. Outside the estate, someone cries out that the situation is bad. In the stables, two panicked men discover that the Viscount's prized horse is dead. The men despair, one shouting that it's a disaster, while the other has no idea what happened. Damien suddenly appears behind them, saying he had a bad feeling, which terrifies the two stable hands. He calmly tells them not to panic and that he won't hold them responsible for the horse. Damien asks to borrow the stable room for a moment, leaving the men completely baffled. Damien confirms his suspicions. The trail of energy he lost led him to the stables and the dead horse. Examining the eerie purple energy emanating from the corpse, he knows it's undoubtedly dark mana. He concludes that the intruder must be a dark mage. Seeing his family sleeping peacefully, Damien decides to handle this himself without worrying them. The dark energy leaves a clear trail, leading away from the Haxon estate. Following the trail, Damien arrives at a hidden cave entrance in the woods, Cuckoo. Inside the cave, the dark mage stands in a makeshift lab, laughing to himself. The mage gloats about the stupidity of the Black Snake's boss for getting him all the materials he requested. He reveals he lied about needing the items for a curse and now has a fresh supply for his experiments. He laments his fall from grace, now forced to take low-tier jobs just for pocket change. He consoles himself, knowing he had no choice with the church hunting him. For now, he decides he needs to lay low. Who? The mage suddenly recoils, complaining about a foul stench. As he complains, Damien appears behind him, offering to crack a window, startling the mage. The dark mage recognizes Damien as the eldest son of Viscount Haxon from the night before. When asked how he was found, Damien coolly replies that he followed the stench the mage left behind. The mage admits he heard rumors of Damien foolishly challenging the Black Snake, but now sees he's no mere brat. Damien confirms the mage was hired by Black Snake, and the mage confesses they wanted him to harm his family. Calling the job pathetic, Damien smirks and informs the mage that he's about to die for it. Ha ha ha. The dark mage cackles, calling Damien amusing and vowing to capture and torture him as a pet. Damien coldly rejects the offer, stating he promised not to kill anyone in this life unless absolutely necessary. With his sword reflecting the mage's face, Damien declares that filthy dark mages are the one exception. The mage is shocked that Damien knows his true identity, realizing he's underestimated his opponent. Vowing not to let him escape, the dark mage unleashes a barrage of magical orbs, screaming for Damien to die. Damien dives forward, skillfully weaving through the deadly projectiles. The dark mage is stunned by his incredible speed. In a flash, Damien swings his sword in a powerful arc. Cue the dark mage grunts in pain as the slash connects, his body dissolving. Damien watches cautiously as the mage's body reassembles, recognizing the regenerative ability from the mansion. He notes that the mage is surprisingly strong, who just smirks as he reforms. The mage laughs, boasting that the attack won't work, but Damien's eyes glow as he vows to cut him down until nothing remains. Damien leaps forward, his sword technique manifesting multiple blades of pure energy. The dark mage's face reflects on the blade as he mockingly admits Damien's reputation is deserved. But it won't save him. Damien coldly informs him that by stepping into this cave, the mage had already sealed his own fate. Keech. Damien swings down with his sword as the surprised mage's shadowy form recoils in agony. Cuckoo. The mage laughs, revealing he's set traps all over the cave to evade the church. Caught by shadowy tendrils, Damien realizes the situation has suddenly become very dangerous. The mage's monstrous form gloats, warning Damien that he will regret crossing an officer of Yulon. He unleashes a curse, screaming that Damien's whole body will rot and die. The dark magical energy gathers, pulsing with menacing power. Cuckoo. The dark mage laughs, calling Damien an arrogant brat who just shortened his own life. The mage thinks greedily that since more damage means more pay, this job is turning out perfectly. Believing Damien is cursed, the mage prepares to leave and finish his business with Louise. Keech. The curse shatters as Damien stands unharmed, leaving the dark mage utterly baffled. The mage frantically asks how much he knows about dark magic, but Damien just shrugs him off. Internally, Damien is just as surprised, wondering how he still possesses the authority from his past life. A flashback reveals a powerful skeletal being explaining that authority is the very power of a god. The skeletal being thoughtfully considers the vessel before him. He looks down upon a kneeling warrior, addressing him as, "My Death Knight." He explains that while he's granted the Death Knight the strongest body in magic, he must also possess the ultimate sword in evil. Therefore, he holds out a sword, ready to bestow it upon him. I shall also give you this power, he declares, to turn you into the ultimate weapon. A massive blast of purple energy erupts from the ritual. Ho, the skeletal being is impressed, recognizing the immense power of authority. He claps his hands together, focusing the power. The overwhelming energy spirals down, ready to be absorbed by the Death Knight. Koog. Even the skeletal being struggles, remarking on the incredible power he's wielding. The raw power surges into the Death Knight's hand. Ah! The Death Knight screams in agony as the power violently floods his body. The skeletal being looks on with satisfaction, stating, "Finally, I have finally obtained it," he concludes, his eye glowing with triumph. Now fully empowered, the Death Knight possesses the authority of God. Back in the present, Damien confirms this is the authority of greed, the same power he wielded as a Death Knight, which he thought was lost. Damien leaps aside, narrowly dodging another blast of dark magic. Landing on a rooftop, the mage furiously demands to know how Damien survived his spell. While Damien cryptically suggests everyone has a trump card, as a notification cheekily labels his power plot armor. He then recalls the mage, identifying himself as an officer of an organization called Yulan. Damien remembers Yulan as an infamous organization specializing in assassinations using dark magic, explaining the mage's skill. The dark mage thinks that something feels off about Damien and decides he must end this quickly, before it gets worse. The mage declares he will use his trump card, originally saved for the church, as Damien notes he has one too. The dark mage begins to summon a tremendous amount of green, swirling energy. He focuses his power, which emanates from a glowing bracelet on his wrist. As he gathers his spell, he senses the considerable amount of dark mana coming from Damien. The mage realizes Damien's bracelet must be a mana-storing artifact, explaining his hidden power. He summons a massive spectral beast, boasting that Damien has no way to handle this level of power. "Burn in hellfire and die," the mage screams, unleashing the full force of his attack. The torrent of green hellfire engulfs the battlefield. "It's over," the mage smirks, convinced Damien has been hit by hellfire that burns eternally, even in death. But a calm voice emerges from the flames, telling the mage he's gravely misunderstood something. The mage is horrified to see the fire disappearing, as Damien explains his authority of greed doesn't just dispel magic. Instead, he stands untouched, the green energy dissolving around him. He absorbs the hellfire, pulling all of the mage's power into himself. With glowing purple eyes, Damien explains that his power absorbs all dark mana completely. The dark mage recoils in terror, demanding to know how a mere boy could possess a terrifying power like an authority. Enveloped in a dark aura, Damien dismisses the question, sarcastically suggesting he just has better gear. Internally, Damien seethes with anger, hating that he must use the power given to him by the one he detests most. Resolved, he decides he has no choice but to use his Death Knight techniques to finish this fight. The Dark Mage panics, recognizing the legendary Aura Blade technique of a swordmaster and begging Damien to wait. Damien ignores his pleas and unleashes his ultimate technique, the soul-severing slash. Overwhelmed by the brilliant blue energy, the Dark Mage screams as the attack descends upon him. The powerful slash engulfs the Dark Mage completely. KRRK. The mage's body shatters into pieces under the force of the devastating attack. Damien stands resolute amidst the destruction, his sword still glowing with power. Koff the Dark Mage lies broken and defeated among the rubble. Pointing his sword at the mage's throat, Damien offers to lessen his pain if he cooperates before he dies. With a menacing aura, Damien demands to know the location of the Black Snake's hideout. The scene transitions to a carriage crossing a bridge into the bustling merchant city of Landwork. A young servant questions Damien, who is reading a strange book, about why they've returned to Landwork. Damien addresses his loyal servant, Victor, telling him to be quiet while Victor notes that his master's face is refreshed, but his reading material is ominous. Victor asks what has his master so focused, gesturing to the grotesque skull on the book's cover. Damien reveals the book is a grimoire he acquired after killing the Dark Mage. Victor states that even an idiot like him knows that dark magic grimoires are dangerous and nearly impossible to obtain. Suddenly noticing a strange smell, Victor asks what it is, as purple particles waft from the book and Damien. As they arrive in the city streets, Damien announces, "We're here." Damien hands a sack to Victor with instructions, but Victor, still noticing the smell, asks what is inside. Victor peeks inside the bag and reels back in horror, scolding his master for his cruel jokes. A reflection in the Dark Mage's severed eye shows Victor's terrified face. Yeah. Damien casually tosses the bag containing the head towards the street. A panicked Victor runs up to his master, who calmly tells him to quiet down and not draw attention. Victor nervously asks what is happening as Damien puts the grimoire away, but Damien says he'll explain later. Damien hands Victor the grimoire and a bag of money, assuring him this will prevent any trouble, leaving the servant terrified. Two guards stand watch before a tall tower adorned with a massive snake carving the Black Snake's headquarters. Damien calmly approaches the two guards, who are startled by his sudden appearance. He sarcastically praises the gangsters for setting up shop in the city center, prompting the guards to demand his identity. Damien confidently introduces himself as Damien Haxon of the Haxonvi County. One of the guards mockingly compares his name to Pig's Foot, clearly unimpressed. The guard with the eye patch has a flash of recognition, realizing this is the person their boss warned them about. Damien acknowledges they know who he is, and curtly tells them to move aside so he can see their boss. The guards seemingly agree, much to Victor's surprise, but one secretly prepares a flare gun. The bald guard fires a red flare straight into the sky, signaling for backup. Damien calmly looks up as the flare streaks across the sky. The eye patch-wearing guard laughs sadistically, asking if Damien really thought they'd let him pass. On cue, cloaked assassins appear on the surrounding rooftops, ready to ambush him. Damien narrows his eyes, unflustered by the trap sprung around him. The guards announce that this ambush is a welcome present from their boss, as dozens of men surround Damien. With a confident smirk, Damien warns them that they will regret their decision. Elsewhere, Landwork Governor Sebastian Baker enjoys a lavish feast, drunkenly thanking a man named Cedric for the enjoyable day. At the same table, a Landwork knight named Robert drunkenly calls for more to drink. Governor Baker tells Cedric and Robert that their company is an honor and invites them to visit any time. The governor casually tells Cedric he approves of the Black Snake taking over the other syndicates, surprising him. He confirms his support for the Black Snake's control over the Red Light District, but Cedric worries about protests from others. Governor Baker grins smugly, boasting that he can easily crush any dissent with his own authority. Governor Baker apologizes to the knight Robert, who humbly insists that the knight protecting the city is more than enough. The governor chuckles, remarking on the difficulty of securing a city like Landwork and telling Robert he's too modest. Ahem. A flattered Robert grins sheepishly at the praise. Cedric chimes in, offering their full support, while Robert boisterously calls for more drinks and women praise the governor. Internally, however, Cedric seethes, vowing he won't have to bow to these fools for much longer. He fantasizes about the Black Snake taking over the entire city, forcing these bastards to finally bow to him. Suddenly, a guard bursts into the room, frantically yelling for his boss and startling Cedric. Annoyed by the interruption, Cedric asks what's wrong, but his subordinate insists he has urgent news. Cedric follows his man out of the room, demanding to know what's so important. The guard leans in and whispers the urgent news into Cedric's ear. The guests, including Robert, overhear the shocking name, Damien Haxon. Cedric grits his teeth in frustration, wondering what happened to the dark mage he hired after specifically warning his subordinates about Damien. Dismissing his worried subordinate, Cedric coolly says not to worry about Damien. From his vantage point, Cedric smirks, convinced that Damien has foolishly walked right into his own grave. Down below, Damien stands surrounded, his eyes flaring with a sinister purple energy. His eyes burn with intense violet power as he prepares for the next wave. Even if things don't go as planned, he's prepared. As another wave of assassins is sent flying, a new trio of cloaked figures with glowing eyes appears, descending upon the street. The lead figure declares that someone owes them a favor, implying they are here to help. Watching from above, Cedric breaks into a nervous sweat. On the tower balcony, he laments that he came outside because he had a bad feeling. Kua. He stares down in horror at the field of his fallen men, wondering how this happened. Cedric watches in disbelief as Damien stands over the last defeated guard, questioning if the boy did all this alone. A panicked Cedric confirms with his guard that their attacker is indeed Damien Haxon. Stunned, Cedric recalls the rumors of the Viscount's useless son, realizing he was dangerously underestimated. His eyes widen in terror as the awful truth dawns on him. The dark mage must have been defeated as well. This won't do. Cedric turns to flee, shouting that he needs to get help as his subordinate calls after him. Damien is suddenly confronted by a new enemy, pointing a magical staff with a glowing red orb. 3 cloaked figures on a roof mock Damien, calling him a monster and challenging him to block their magic. One of the mages unleashes a torrent of fire from his staff. Damien braces himself as the massive fireball hurtles toward him. Pooh-ha-ha! The mage laughs maniacally, calling Damien an idiot for thinking a sword can stop their flames. Damien unleashes a secret move, Countless Thunder Shadow Revelation, creating a swirling vortex of power that consumes the fire. The lead mage can only stare in utter shock, stammering, sizzle. The aftermath leaves the mages defeated and smoldering as Damien remarks that he's about done here. As Damien prepares to find the Black Snake's boss, he senses a new, powerful presence approaching. Wham! A heavily armored figure slams into the ground with devastating force. Damien steadies himself as the dust settles, revealing the imposing armored warrior who has just arrived. Damien feels the immense pressure of the newcomer's aura, noting that it's so thick it prickles his skin. The armored man Robert senses Damien's power, realizing this is more than just some troublemaking punk. Based on his energy, Robert concludes that the overconfident young man must be an official knight. As city guards surround Damien, he notes the arrival of a knight and soldiers meant to keep public order. A voice roars from off-panel, demanding to know how Damien dares to cause such chaos. Governor Sebastian Baker appears with Robert and Cedric, vowing to punish Damien, who wryly greets the grand guest. Damien calmly asks why he should be punished, enraging the governor, who sputters at his brazen nonsense. The governor accuses Damien of attacking the kind businessman, Cedric, and slaughtering his employees, while a bystander scoffs at the lie. Cuckoo, Cedric smirks, confident that Damien is powerless against him now that he has the governor's protection. Damien finally identifies Cedric as the boss of the Black Snake and invites him over for a punch, infuriating the gangster. Damien smirks, admitting he suspected the Black Snake had connections, but finds the governor's laughably bad judgment hilarious. The governor furiously offers a reduced sentence if Damien begs for forgiveness, but Damien defiantly states he committed no crime. Seeing his authority challenged, Governor Baker declares he has no choice but to act, prompting Cedric to call for Sir Robert. The armored knight, Robert, takes a decisive step forward. Robert towers over Damien, exuding a powerful and intimidating presence. Introducing himself as the city's guardian knight, Robert orders Damien to drop his weapon and surrender. Robert notes Damien's complete lack of fear, wondering if he's bold or just stupid, but Damien coolly replies, "I'm confident." Calling Damien a fool, Robert unleashes a powerful, glowing attack. Damien successfully blocks the blow, but internally admits that defeating the knight at his current level won't be easy. He resolves to hold out, biding his time until the right moment arrives. Pow! The force of Robert's attack sends Damien sliding backward across the ground. Shaking his numb arm, Damien marvels at the knight's incredible power, which was still immense even after he deflected the blow. Damien glances away, wondering where she is, as Robert taunts him for being distracted and rushes in. Acknowledging the knight's speed, Damien prepares for another devastating attack. Wham! Robert's massive axe smashes the ground where Damien just stood. The axe was a feint, as Damien narrowly dodges a spear from a guard, shocking Governor Baker and Cedric. Suddenly clutching a fresh wound, Robert angrily demands to know the identity of Damien's hidden associate. A white-haired woman in armor, glowing with holy power, appears protectively beside Damien. Robert stares in absolute shock, identifying the newcomer as a paladin. Damien smirks at the paladin, asking her with mock exasperation why she was so late. In a brief flashback, Victor arrives on the scene, announcing his return to his young master. Victor beams, shouting that he has arrived. Cedric watches the paladin and her cloaked allies arrive, realizing with dread that the church is now involved. As the paladin and her powerful companions stand ready, Cedric panics, fearing they know about his deal with the dark mages. Damien pinches his servant's cheek, teasingly scolding him for being late, while Victor asks if he's okay. As Victor fusses, Damien turns to the paladin, who confirms that he appears to have done what she asked of him. His cheeks still squished, Victor proudly proclaims that he, Victor, can always be counted on to handle orders. The scene transitions to the exterior of a grand and imposing church. Inside, a group of cloaked figures and a nun kneel in prayer before a massive, ornate cross. The kneeling nun suddenly senses a presence. Meanwhile, an out-of-breath Victor arrives at the church doors, carrying the grimoire and the lumpy sack. The nun from the prayer scene approaches and asks what he needs. Victor nervously explains his master sent him with evidence of someone colluding with a dark mage. The nun's eyes widen with alarm at his words. She asks to see the evidence, and Victor timidly presents the grimoire. Taking the book, the nun immediately senses the feeble but unmistakable energy of dark magic. Her eyes lock onto the cover as she recognizes a specific, shocking symbol. Intrigued, she reaches for the sack Victor is holding. She grips something inside by the hair. Eek! She pulls out the severed head of the dark mage, horrifying Victor. Her eyes glowing with divine power, she identifies the head as a Jito, a leader of Yulan, whom she has finally found. With grim purpose, she grabs the collar of her habit. She tears away her nun's robes, revealing the paladin armor underneath. A determined, brilliant smile lights up her face. Returning to the present, the paladin informs Damien that she secured the evidence, and the church will take over, to which he agrees. A nervous Governor Baker and Cedric quickly assure her they won't interfere with the Holy Church. The paladin offers a gracious thank you. With Victor by his side, Damien watches the paladin, satisfied that things are proceeding exactly as he expected. A narration explains that the members of the church live their lives as servants of God. They are endlessly merciful and charitable to common folk. But when confronting heretics and demons, they are willing to set their very souls ablaze to fight. They are the holy vanguards of the church, an army of righteous fury. The paladin looks toward Damien and Victor, announcing that her allies from the church are now on her side. She addresses the crowd, declaring that the church is officially investigating a report of someone in Landwork colluding with a wanted dark mage. The townspeople react with shock and outrage, wondering who would dare to work with such dirty bastards. The paladin asserts her authority, proclaiming that the church will be in charge of the city to uncover the collaborators. A furious Governor Baker objects, yelling that the church has no right to govern a city granted autonomy, especially while he, the viceroy, is present. The paladin calmly states that the church's authority to purge heretics supersedes the kingdom's, adding with a threatening look that there is more to come. Robert and the governor demand an explanation, both vehemently denying any association with a dark mage. The paladin points an accusatory finger directly at Cedric, publicly naming him as the one who hid and supported the dark mage. Her eyes narrow with judgment, as she insists that merely protecting such a man is suspicious enough. Robert confronts Cedric, demanding answers, while a sweating Cedric frantically denies the, quote, outrageous accusation. Unmoved by his denial, the paladin states coolly that she has evidence. She presents a notebook, revealing it to be Cedric Walker's ledger detailing every transaction made for the dark mage, which she claims can be verified. Cedric grits his teeth in silent rage, infuriated that the dark mage wrote down incriminating proof. As church nights advance, Cedric desperately pleads that it's all a misunderstanding, but the paladin retorts that the investigation will determine that. With cold finality, the paladin gives the order, "Take him." Cedric and the governor are seized by cloaked knights, shouting and struggling against their captors. A church knight easily restrains the protesting governor. Damien observes the unfolding scene, realizing with a smirk that the paladin planned this takeover from the start. The governor panics in his captor's grip, terrified of what the religious fanatics will do to him. Cedric desperately calls out to Sir Robert, begging him to intervene and claiming the zealous church will frame him. As Robert himself is apprehended by two knights, Cedric screams his name one last time. Believing capture means certain death, Robert unleashes a shockwave of power, breaking free from his captors. Vowing to kill everyone and escape, Robert raises his glowing axe to strike down the paladin. Cedric grins maniacally, confident in Robert's power, as Damien looks on with detached calm. In an instant, Damien appears and blocks the axe with a single hand, calling Robert's attempt foolish. Robert stares in absolute shock, unable to comprehend how his powerful strike was stopped so easily. With a blinding flash, Damien delivers a devastating punch to Robert's side, flooring the knight as Cedric watches in horror. With his fist still glowing, Damien declares that anyone who disobeys the will of God will be judged. A holy warrior cloaked in blue energy stands triumphantly over the defeated Robert. The paladin's own divine power flares intensely as she watches the judgment unfold. As the holy warrior stands over Robert, the paladin decrees that anyone who stands in the way of God's will shall be punished. Her divine aura surges, underscoring her absolute authority in the matter. Defeated and bound, Cedric is forced onto his knees. Gah! The governor screams insults as he is forcefully dragged away by a church knight. Victor observes that the notorious boss of the Black Snake is just a fat nobody, much like himself, which Damien confirms. Cedric trembles with helpless rage, unable to believe he was brought down by a single brat. The paladin thanks Damien for resolving the situation, and he internally acknowledges that she is even stronger than he first thought. Damien speculates that, given her immense sacred power, the woman must be the apprentice of the Azure Flame. A title card introduces the Azure Flame Brigandine, one of the 5 great saints and the strongest warrior in the church. A vision depicts the awesome power of the Azure Flame, a warrior moving like a blur of holy energy. The paladin turns and addresses Damien Haxton by his full name. She expresses her deepest gratitude for his role in taking down a Yu'lon officer, but Damien humbly brushes it off as his duty. The paladin informs him that as a reward for his contribution, the church will not press any charges against him. Damien plays coy with a slight smile, pretending not to understand what charges she could be referring to. She sees right through him, asking if he didn't call the church to cover up his own attack on the Black Snake, forcing Damien to admit she's sharp. Damien gives a sheepish bow as the paladin explains that since the Dark Mage also harmed her family, she has no grounds to hold him accountable. Listening to her reasoning, Damien concludes that she is far more flexible than her rigid reputation suggests. The paladin confirms the bounty on Ajito's head will be paid, while Damien inwardly expected as much and wonders about the amount. Whoa, Victor is stunned by the sight of the reward, a pile of gold large enough to buy a castle. But Damien has another idea. As Damien asks for a different kind of reward, a horrified Victor wonders why his master would turn down such an incredible fortune. Rejecting the gold, Damien requests one of the church's mana cultivation techniques instead. The paladin is baffled, wondering why someone so powerful would need a mana technique. Damien explains that his fight with the Dark Mage was a lucky win, relying on his authority. With grim determination, he states that to defeat even greater enemies in the future, and to face legions of powerful foes and reach higher levels of strength, he absolutely needs a knight's mana training technique far more advanced than what he knows. He admits he's only learned basic methods, shocking the paladin that he's reached this level with so little. Internally, she senses his immense aura and realizes his talent must be truly extraordinary. She considers his resolve to cut down heretics without hesitation and has an idea. A sly smile crosses her face as she suggests a better alternative and asks if he's interested. Glowing with holy light, she offers him a prestigious opportunity to become a paladin. Damien and Victor listen to her offer, but Damien remains silent and unimpressed. "I'm not," he flatly refuses, completely deflating the hopeful paladin. As the paladin sputters in disbelief, Victor scolds her, reminding her of Damien's power, while she demands to know why he'd refuse. Her eyes glowing with righteous fury, she proclaims becoming a paladin is the greatest honor, as a terrified Victor cries out to his master. She challenges his refusal, but Damien calmly states he has no religious faith. Internally, Damien thinks he has no interest in being a dog for the church, and decides to make up a plausible excuse. He humbly declares that he is not yet worthy of receiving God's love, confusing Victor. With angelic wings and a halo, Damien theatrically vows to travel the world as a humble devotee, as Victor questions if this lie will work. It worked. The paladin tearfully grabs his hands, deeply moved by his piety, while Victor stares in disbelief. She agrees to provide the mana technique and extends an open invitation to the church, which Damien politely accepts, while asking for one more thing, privately vowing it will never happen. The paladin formally introduces herself as Agnes, first apprentice of the Azure Flame. Damien expresses his honor, confirming his suspicions. Damien asks to finish his business there, and Agnes agrees, while a weary Victor looks on. A bound and beaten thug from the Black Snake gang looks up in terror. Damien, his eyes covered, grabs the man's head as the man curses him. Damien delivers a punishing gut punch, noting the man's fat belly is like a cushion. As the thug screams an insult, Damien follows up with a savage kick to the face. Erg. The thug goes flying, shocking Agnes and Victor. Victor asks his young master if it's all over, and Damien confirms with a satisfied smile. The scene shifts to the grand estate of the Marquis of the Leon Bloom family. A man in a mask, Marquis Holland Leon Bloom, bursts through a door, furiously shouting for someone named Erwin. The Marquis and a butler find a figure trembling under the covers of a bed. Peeking out, a young man whimpers, F-father. The Marquis pulls his son Erwin into his arms, demanding to know what happened as the boy sobs that someone tried to kill him. Erwin hysterically claims someone held a fork to him, and his father trembles with rage to see his child so terrified. The Marquis furiously demands to know who dared to harm his son. A guard steps forward, commanded to speak and reveal the culprit's name. The guard identifies the attacker as Damien of House Haxon. On a nearby dresser, a set of fine porcelain vases begins to shake violently. Crash. The vases shatter as the Marquis furiously dismisses the report, certain a lowly Haxon must have used a cowardly trick. Clenching his fist, the Marquis gives a chilling order. Send men to the Haxon estate at once. His eyes glowing with red fury, he commands his men to drag Damien back to him like a dog. At the Haxon estate, a man and woman are greeted by a visitor. Agnes, flanked by two cloaked knights, introduces herself as a paladin affiliated with the church. Damien's parents, Viscount Haxon and his wife, nervously welcome the unexpected guests. Damien calmly observes as his father internally fumes about his brat son bringing a church fanatic home. After the Viscount offers lodging, Agnes explains it's for the heretic investigation and presents a small token of gratitude. The token is the massive bag of gold, and the Viscount's demeanor instantly changes, happily welcoming them to stay. Agnes thanks Sir Damien for his cooperation as his parents beam, clutching their newfound fortune. Damien sweats, recalling Agnes's other request, and realizing with dread that she has actually come to his house. Agnes politely interrupts Damien to ask him something else, and he warily asks what it is about. With a brilliant smile, Agnes declares her wish to spread the gospel. Damien's parents stop in their tracks, caught off guard by the paladin and her knights. As his mother wonders aloud what Agnes wants, his father gives a thumbs up, prompting a flustered Damien to insist it's not what they think. Agnes presents Damien with the mana cultivation manuals he requested, noting they are specially selected volumes. Damien asks why there are two books, and she explains that she included a matching sword technique, as it wouldn't be right otherwise. He examines the destructive sword and energy technique manuals, realizing he's never seen these powerful techniques, even in his past life. Agnes thanks him again, admitting it was difficult to get the manuals because of strong opposition from within the church. She explains she had to use her master's authority, adding that her master believes Damien is the exact kind of chosen one the church needs. Taking his hand, Agnes earnestly asks Damien to please reconsider becoming a paladin. Damien firmly pulls his hand away from hers, a silent but clear rejection. Agnes smiles and tells him to come find her if he ever changes his mind. As Agnes departs, Damien watches her go, deep in thought. Damien concludes that Agnes is a true fanatic with a frightening level of obsession, noting his one rejection has done nothing. The scene shifts to the overgrown entrance of a dark, rocky cave. Inside the cave, two of Agnes's cloaked investigators examine the Dark Mage's lair when one calls out to his partner. One investigator voices his suspicion about the case, while his partner, inspecting with a magnifying glass, asks what he means. He questions how Ajito, a high-ranking Yulan member who repeatedly evaded the church, could have been defeated so easily. He argues that even if Ajito was weaker in direct combat, it's unbelievable that a simple rural noble could have killed him. His partner admits to having the same doubts, but points out that they can't do anything since Lady Agnes hasn't questioned the story. As they debate whether to report their concerns, a voice suddenly tells them to trust Damien Haxon, startling them both. They turn to find Agnes, who acknowledges their doubts but assures them that Damien did not lie. When Agnes says they already heard how Damien did it, the two knights look at each other in confusion. A flashback shows Damien's simple, smug explanation that he just dodged and cut off Ajito's head, which had left the two knights speechless. Agnes recalls that even she doubted Damien's skills when his servant first arrived with Ajito's severed head. Kuag! As a scream echoes in a flashback, Agnes reveals that she decided to observe him from afar rather than intervene directly. In a vision of the past, she recalls how he single-handedly fought and completely overwhelmed dozens of men without sustaining a single scratch. A fiery image shows Damien's overwhelming power as he cuts down his foes. His incredible speed is shown as he deflects a massive burst of energy. Agnes reveals the most astonishing feat she witnessed. He deflected a fireball, a magic spell, leaving her knights utterly shocked. She confirms it's possible, explaining that a swordmaster can block all forms of attack, including magic. While she clarifies Damien is not a swordmaster, she asserts he is undoubtedly an extraordinary warrior. Agnes reveals that her true goal was not just to pursue Yulan, but to recruit Damien for the church, seeing him as a great asset. She orders her men to set aside their doubts and resume the investigation. The two knights acknowledge her command as the scene closes in on the dark cave. Three knights on horseback, bearing the Leon Bloom family crest, ride across an open field. An apprentice knight named Ulpis stretches triumphantly, exclaiming that they have finally arrived. Another apprentice, Lavender, gags at the smell of cow dung, but Ulpis tells the countryside bumpkin to get used to it. As Lavender complains, the lead knight silences him with a sharp, "Quiet." A title card identifies the stern, blonde-haired leader as Garrick, an official knight of the Leon Bloom family. As they approach, Garrick asks if the large manor ahead is the Haxon estate. Ulpis asks Sir Garrick to repeat their mission orders from the Marquis. Lavender confirms their objective. They are here to arrest Damien Haxon. Garrick scoffs that catching trash will be easy, but grits his teeth, vowing it won't be enough to avenge the humiliation of the Marquis and his son. Garrick's steely gaze falls upon an old man walking with a cane on the side of the road. The three mounted knights ride past the lone, elderly man. "Hey, old man," Garrick calls out, reining in his horse to a halt. The old man turns, intimidated by the menacing red-eyed knights, and asks who they are. Garrick demands to know if he is a resident of the Haxon estate, and the old man nervously confirms, asking what this is about. FWIP. Without warning, the knights strike the old man as they ride past him. Garrick coldly scoffs at the mere resident as he grips his sword. As the old man lies beaten on the ground, Garrick declares that not bowing to the Leon Bloom crest is a grave offense. Garrick addresses his apprentices, Lavender and Ulpis, while one of them wonders if the old man they just struck was blind. With a cruel smile, Garrick announces that he's just had a great idea. As they approach the Haxon estate, where Victor is sweeping the grounds, Garrick reveals his plan to drag Damien out. Victor looks up, startled by the approaching knights. Garrick's terrible plan concludes. After capturing Damien, they will slaughter everyone else in sight, horrifying Victor. The scene shifts to Agnes and her two knights walking near a quiet, rocky creek. Agnes tells her knights they did great work, even though the investigation site collapsed before they could gather much information. One of her knights suddenly stops, pointing out something in the distance that catches Agnes's attention. They stare in shock at the sight of Damien meditating on a rock, surrounded by a swirling vortex of mana. Damien remains in deep, focused meditation, absorbing the potent energy around him. Agnes watches in absolute astonishment, wondering what in the world she is witnessing. She recalls that the technique she gave him should only allow mana absorption at an extreme level of mastery. She is left stunned, questioning how he could possibly achieve such a feat in only a few hours. Damien opens his eyes to see Agnes and her knights staring at him with looks of pure admiration. Damien approaches the flustered Agnes and asks if her investigation is finished, which she quickly confirms. Agnes compliments his progress with the manual, but Damien nonchalantly claims he's only made a little headway. Internally, Damien notes that while the sword techniques are meaningless to a former swordmaster, the cultivation method was extremely useful. A narration explains that the destructive energy technique rapidly gathers mana to compensate for the sword style's heavy consumption. Damien and Agnes stand in a moment of charged silence. Agnes notes it's dinner time and awkwardly invites him to return with them, but Damien's expression hardens as he senses a sudden, intense bloodlust. "Vermin have arrived," Damien states grimly, startling Agnes with his sudden change in demeanor. Citing urgent business, Damien tells Agnes he's leaving first and that she should return at her own pace. In a flash, Damien dashes away, leaving a stunned Agnes in his wake. Agnes can only watch, marveling at his incredible speed. She deduces that to move so quickly with so little mana, he must be controlling it with unbelievable precision. The question hangs in the air, just how far do his abilities go as Damien races onward? Keok. Back at the estate, Victor is brutally punched by one of the Leon Bloom knights. The knight Lavender sneers as Victor coughs and collapses to the ground. While his men beat Victor, Garrick furiously demands they bring Damien to him immediately. Despite being kicked, Victor defiantly yells that he won't let them hurt his master. As the beating continues, Victor desperately calls out for the Viscount, who comes running from the manor with his wife. The knight Lavender turns and commands the approaching Viscount Haxon to stop at once. Viscount Haxon arrives on the scene, his face a mask of rage as the knight addresses him. The Viscount rushes to Victor's side, cradling his beaten servant and asking if he's all right. Holding the injured boy, Viscount Haxon furiously demands an explanation for knights assaulting a civilian. Garrick coldly retorts that this is nothing compared to the offense House Haxon committed against House Leon Bloom. From atop his horse, Garrick formally declares that Marquis Clis Leon Bloom demands Damien Haxon. Garrick offers to spare the land if they hand Damien over, but the Viscount sees the barbaric act for what it is. Garrick smirks, sensing the Viscount's thoughts that even if he complied, they would burn everything to the ground. With fierce determination, Viscount Haxon resolves that he will never hand his son over. Seeing the Viscount's defiance, Garrick grimly states that they are left with no other choice. Destroy everything. Garrick commands his 2 knights, who charge forward to carry out the order. You bastards! Stop! The Viscount screams, aghast that the vermin have truly lost their minds. Suddenly, a figure appears in a flash of dark energy, stopping the charging knights in their tracks. Garrick stares, completely baffled as to when the figure appeared. Damien stands calmly before the stunned knight, who demands to know who he is. The knight freezes, overwhelmed by an unseen pressure as he wonders what is happening. A man is paralyzed by an unseen force, crying out in pain as he finds himself unable to move. A young Damien rushes to his father's side, asking if he's all right. The Viscount reassures him, but expresses worry for Victor. Damien looks down with grim determination at the bruised and unconscious face of his servant, Victor. Confronting 2 armored knights, Damien coldly states that if Victor hadn't been so sturdy, he'd have killed them all. A blonde noble with prominent sideburns appears, mocking Damien as a madman and dismissing his victory as nothing more than a petty trick. The noble orders his knights to crush Damien's legs and force him to kneel, and they eagerly charge forward. Damien braces himself against a shield, deciding to go all out against his attackers. Attack? He effortlessly parries a sword strike, thinking the timing is perfect. Gah! Gripping the knight's arm, Damien unleashes a destructive energy technique, channeling collected mana into his foe. He drives his palm into the knight's chest, pleased that such perfect test subjects have appeared. The second knight watches in horror, crying out his companion's name, Lavender, as a strike sends him flying. A swift kick sends the knight named Lavender tumbling through the air. The blonde noble, mounted on his horse, looks on in stunned silence. Victor's eyes weakly flutter open as he recognizes his young master. With the knights defeated, Damien turns his attention to his servant, asking if he's all right. Trembling on the ground, the beaten Victor weakly reaches out a hand. Despite his injuries, Victor manages a proud smile and a thumbs up for his master. Huh? Damien turns back, surprised by Victor's show of support. Watching from a distance, a formidable blonde warrior smirks, finding Damien to be an interesting character. The blonde warrior approaches, expressing surprise that Damien wasn't fooled by Lord Irwin's cheap tricks. He looks at his fallen men, questioning how a mere rascal like Damien could possess such formidable skills. Standing protectively before his father and Victor, Damien coolly tells the warrior he doesn't need to know. The blonde warrior has a sudden epiphany, exclaiming that he finally understands, leaving Damien confused. Pointing dramatically, the blonde warrior begins to make a grand declaration. As the Viscount and Victor watch in confusion, Damien asks what the warrior is talking about. The blonde warrior furiously shouts, telling Damien not to lie. He accuses Damien of being an imposter hired by enemies to sabotage the Lionbloom family, insisting the real Damien Haxon could never be so strong. Damien sighs, thinking his opponent is even more stupid than he initially believed. Enraged by the perceived insult, the blonde warrior's eyes glow red as he prepares to attack. From the ground, the defeated knight Lavender decides his best course of action is to just pretend to be knocked out. Viscount Haxon calls out to his son, urging Damien to win the fight. The blonde warrior tightens his gauntlet, readying himself for battle. As the warrior charges, Damien waits calmly, hands on his hips. The blonde warrior's eye glows ominously as he concludes that while Damien is skilled, his luck has just run out. He initiates a technique that creates ripples on the ground, preparing to strike the moment Damien enters his range. The warrior lunges with his massive sword, vowing to split Damien in half. A glowing red blade descends upon Damien with incredible force. With a smirk, Damien easily blocks the powerful blow, impressed that House Lionbloom sent a proper knight this time. The force of the parry throws the blonde warrior off balance. Stunned, the warrior realizes with disbelief that Damien actually parried his thrust. Believing the parry was a fluke, the warrior unleashes a furious flurry of red slashes, daring Damien to block again. Damien effortlessly dodges the attack, coolly telling the warrior he's too slow. The blonde warrior's eyes widen in absolute shock at Damien's speed. With his own eyes glowing purple, Damien declares it's his turn and launches his counterattack. He unleashes a series of impossibly fast strikes against the warrior's head and chest. Ah! The warrior cries out in pain, unable to track Damien's movements as a palm strike lands squarely on his chest. Damien follows up with a devastating kick to the side of the warrior's head. The blonde warrior is sent spiraling to the ground from the force of the blow. The massive warrior crashes heavily into the dirt, defeated. Standing over his fallen opponent, Damien declares with cold fury that that last attack was for Victor. The defeated blonde warrior trembles on the ground, stuttering in disbelief at Damien's power. In rage, the warrior's eyes glow red as he lunges forward, screaming that Damien is a bastard. He unleashes his ultimate technique, the devouring lion's sword of anger, forming a massive energy claw. Unimpressed, Damien dismisses the attack as boisterous, and prepares to counter with a single throwing knife. He calmly states that the flashy technique is all show as his knife meets the tip of the energy claw. With a single touch from his knife, the warrior's powerful energy attack begins to crack and shatter. The blonde warrior cries out in agony as his ultimate move is effortlessly nullified, his armor breaking apart. Damien summons a massive blue energy dragon that lunges at the now defenseless warrior. The warrior screams in pure terror as the devastating energy attack closes in. The force of the dragon technique slams into the warrior, sending him flying across the ground. Watching from the side, a bruised Victor celebrates with Viscount Haxon, cheering that his master has won. The defeated blonde warrior clutches his injured shoulder, groaning in pain and trying to apply pressure. A blade is suddenly pressed to his throat, and the warrior looks up in shock. The warrior begs for his life, admitting defeat but claiming not to know his opponent. Damien coldly identifies himself as Damien Haxon. Damien scoffs, telling the warrior he should have begged for his life earlier, and that it's too late now. He reminds his foe that he messed with his family and injured his servant, then questions why he should show mercy. The blonde warrior falls to his knees, desperately apologizing for his actions as Damien stands over him. With a smirk, Damien asks if the warrior still doesn't understand who he truly needs to apologize to. As Damien walks away, the confused warrior looks up from the ground, wondering what he means. He looks over to see Victor and Viscount Haxon looming over him with menacing, glowing red eyes. Now understanding, the blonde warrior and his two knights kneel with their heads bowed in apology. Victor gleefully asks Damien if he can hit the kneeling warrior more, but Damien says that's enough, as it might kill him. Victor suggests cutting off a limb instead, making the warrior flinch in terror. Heek. Damien muses that it's not a bad idea. Viscount Haxon places a hand on his son's shoulder, calmly telling Damien that it's enough. The blonde warrior desperately apologizes to Sir Haxon for all of his disrespect. Viscount Haxon's face hardens as he furiously asks if a single apology is enough to make up for his actions. He explains that without Damien's strength, their territory would have been destroyed and his son taken. The warrior slams his head to the ground, begging Viscount Haxon for mercy. The Viscount gives a grim, silent stare, his mouth set in a hard line. He gives Damien a slight nod, seemingly granting him permission to decide the men's fate. Damien reflects that he doesn't actually want to kill them, as it would sever all ties with House Leonbloom. He knows he could fight the Marquis family alone, but not while he has his own family to protect. He realizes letting them go will only lead to retaliation, leaving him wondering what he should do. Suddenly, a voice calls out to Sir Damien, catching his attention. A white-haired woman in a cape rushes towards them, asking what happened. Damien recognizes the woman, thinking to himself that she will be helpful this time as well. After being briefed, the woman thoughtfully considers the situation. She offers her help to solve his problem, and Damien asks if she has an idea. The woman explains that thanks to House Haxon, they killed a Yulan executive, a first-time achievement. Because of this, she explains, they can officially designate House Haxon as an allied household, much to Damien's surprise. Damien realizes this alliance could save his family from crisis, while Victor asks his father what being an ally means. The woman eagerly takes Damien's hands, asking him to accept their request, and he stammers his agreement. PF'd with a sinister grin, Damien reveals this was his plan all along, to gain the protection of the church. As Damien steps away, Victor whispers to his father, asking if he just seduced her. The Viscount nods in agreement. Damien turns to the defeated warriors with a menacing glare, asking if they all heard the news. He orders the terrified blonde warrior to report to the Lion Blooms that House Haxon is now under the church's protection. With his eyes glowing, Damien warns that any future aggression will be met with the church's wrath, then tells them to get lost. As the defeated knights flee, a triumphant Victor shakes his club, shouting that they should count their lucky stars. Victor happily declares they can finally breathe easy, but Damien looks thoughtful, saying he's not so sure. Damien says they now have to figure out their next move, and the Viscount declares it's time for a family meeting. Damien quietly agrees to the family meeting. In the meeting room, Viscount Haxon officially begins the family conference. A brown-haired woman states the meeting's topic, how to handle the feud with House Leon Bloom. A young man with glasses questions the need for a meeting, believing the church's protection is enough. The brown-haired woman, Louise, tells the man with glasses, Abel, that the church won't fully intervene, which the Viscount confirms. Viscount Haxon explains the church avoids noble affairs and the Lion Bloom's power extends beyond their military. He continues, explaining that a powerful house like Leon Bloom could easily crush them through non-military means. Damien considers their grim options, concluding that seeking protection from another noble house is their best bet. The white-haired woman from the church steps forward, declaring there is another way. She grandly suggests that Damien Haxon could become a paladin, much to his private annoyance. Damien bluntly rejects the offer in front of his stunned family. The Viscount awkwardly dismisses the idea, while Damien sits stubbornly with his arms crossed. Furious, Abel slams his hands on the table and shouts at his father. He demands to know why his father is accepting Damien's refusal when becoming a paladin would solve all their problems. Abel taunts Damien, urging his father to force the issue, but Damien's glare silences him. The Viscount slams the table, reminding Abel that he's the one who started this mess. With a menacing aura, Damien quietly tells Abel to sit down while he's asking nicely, terrifying him. CSK. Intimidated, Abel slumps back into his chair, the room thick with tension. The Viscount admits that while Damien caused the conflict, it wasn't entirely his fault. The Viscountess explains that the Marquis's son lusted after Louise and would have pursued her regardless. Overcome with shame, the Viscount admits that Damien protected Louise in his place because he was powerless. The Viscount turns his attention back to his son, Damien. He places a hand on Damien's shoulder, who looks up, surprised by the sudden gesture. The Viscount proudly commends Damien for standing up to the insult against their family, catching Damien off guard. Damien dismisses the praise, saying he just did what was necessary, while Abel scoffs from his seat. The Viscount declares he will handle things now, and his wife encourages Louise to let him act like a proper father. As the Viscount stands by Damien, a voice from the door asks to enter. A butler enters, announcing a visitor from House Gold Pixie, leaving the Viscount confused. The butler reveals that Damien used the family's wheat fields as collateral for a loan, and payment is overdue. Viscount Haxon trembles with rage while Damien smirks, knowing what's coming. With a demonic roar, the Viscount lunges and attacks his son. From outside the Haxon estate, a furious shout of, "You damn brat!" is heard. A flashback begins, showing a man with a braided ponytail removing his hat. The man greets Damien, who has a vague memory of him. Introducing himself as Olan Demishi, a manager from Dash and Cash, he announces he's here to collect a debt. Damien recalls how Olan manipulated his past self with sweet words, convincing him to use the land as collateral. Cursing his past self, Damien nervously asks how much he owes. Olan informs him the total is 300 gold, causing Damien to gasp in shock. As Olan offers to show the contract, Damien panics, realizing his family can't possibly afford the debt. He has a horrifying vision of his entire family being forced to beg on the streets. Olan reminds him that the land now belongs to Dash and Cash, despite his previous assurances. Smirking, Olan states that Duke Gold Pixie ordered the collection of all debts, from nobles and commoners alike. He asks Damien if he has the money, or if there's a problem. With glowing eyes, Olan menacingly asks if Damien doesn't have the funds. I see. A sinister grin spreads across Olan's face as he realizes the truth. Olan nonchalantly takes a seat on a nearby sofa. TSK. He lounges back, chiding Damien for borrowing money he couldn't repay. He cracks his knuckles, preparing for what's next. Olin decides to collect the debt his own way, as his two enforcers loom threateningly. He reveals that he enjoys this moment of power over a desperate noble even more than money itself. In a flashback, an arrogant noble in purple demands a man grovel before him. The man's thoughts shift to Damien Haxon, wondering what his face will look like. Huff, huff. The man relishes the thought with a gleeful, almost manic expression, finding the idea thrilling. In the Haxon dining room, Viscount Haxon and his son Abel pace anxiously. Damien's mother calmly sips her tea, telling her husband and Abel to sit down and rest. The Viscount and Abel panic, exclaiming that their family's entire future is at stake. Damien's mother and sister express their faith in Damien, reminding the men he has never failed them. The Viscount anxiously counters that Damien's past successes were only due to his exceptional swordsmanship. He insists that combat and negotiation are entirely different skills, flashing back to Damien's brawling. The flashback shows Damien delivering a devastating blow. After smashing his foe into a wall, Damien casually says, "Oops!" shocking a man with a braided pigtail. Holding his defeated opponent by the hair, Damien worries his father will be mad about the broken wall. A massive bodyguard attacks Damien from behind, shouting, "You little brat!" Damien's hand crackles with a surge of raw, purple energy. Q. He unleashes a powerful palm strike directly into the bodyguard's throat. Ugh, arg, Damien effortlessly lifts the choking man, noting that drawing a sword on a noble is a crime. With a menacing smirk, Damien calls it self-defense, causing the man with the pigtail to shriek in terror. Hike, the flashback ends as Damien approaches the terrified man, who cowers on his couch. Damien towers over the speechless man, simply saying, "Hey." He tells the terrified man to loosen up his legs, who nervously complies. Damien explains he can't repay his debt right now, but before the man can agree, Damien interrupts him. With a bright smile, Damien suggests repaying the debt in another unspoken way. Trembling, the man with the pigtail stammers his agreement, completely intimidated. A bright sunny day dawns at the Haxon estate. Damien's brother, Abel, dramatically tells his father he's heartbroken, prompting the Viscount to ask why. Damien states it's because justice was defeated by violence, then bids his family farewell before his trip. As Abel continues his tantrum, Viscount Haxon tells him to stop the nonsense and cheer for his brother. Internally, the Viscount admits he only reluctantly agreed to Damien's plan and worries if it will work. Outside, Damien finds Agnes waiting, who says it's a pity they are parting so soon. He thanks her for her help, but she humbly insists she only did what was necessary. Blushing, Agnes mentions her team's investigation is over, and they'll be leaving tomorrow. Agnes gives Damien her blessing for a safe journey, which he graciously accepts. When she tries one last time to recruit him, Damien flatly rejects her, stating he won't change his mind. With goodbyes finished, Damien prepares to leave as Victor confirms the carriage is ready. Damien and Victor board the spacious carriage, where the man with the pigtail nervously welcomes them. Hee. The man promises to ensure their journey is comfortable and convenient. Pleased by his attitude, Damien suggests they have lobster for lunch, surprising the man. Damien calls to Victor, announcing that it's time to go, and Victor cheers in excitement. Victor eagerly looks out the carriage window as they set off. Hee. The horses rear up, and the carriage begins to move. With a confident smirk, Damien declares, "It's time to get moving." Their destination is announced. To House Gold Pixie they go. Whoa, Damien, Victor, and their guide arrive, awestruck by the massive estate. They admire the Gold Pixie estate, a mansion befitting the richest family in the kingdom. Damien thanks the man with the pigtail, who eagerly informs him that the Duke is expecting him. In a dark flashback, the man seethes, recalling his humiliation and cursing Damien for treating him like a servant. The man wishes Damien well, but internally hopes for his utter failure. As Damien walks towards the estate, he promises he'll be back. Inside a lavish room, an unseen person asks if he is Damien Haxon. The speaker is revealed to be Adam Goldpixie, the Duke, who questions if Damien is the infamous Haxon troublemaker. In a grand office, Damien confronts a long-haired man and an older white-haired man, asking why they were looking for him. Damien explains he borrowed money from their lending business, and the due date has passed, which the long-haired man acknowledges. He admits he cannot pay with money and asks if he can pay his debt another way. piquing the long-haired man's interest. Damien recalls the rumor that has recently spread throughout the entire Apple Kingdom. It's explained that a gold mine on the Leon Blum Gold Pixie border prompted the two rival families to plan a duel for its control. With a confident smirk, Damien proposes that he will defeat the Leon Blooms as payment for his debt. The two nobles and their three knights stare back in utter shock at his audacious offer. The older, white-haired guard knight, Gale Heimlich, laughs, realizing Damien must have heard the news, which the long-haired noble confirms. Damien recalls the rumor that has recently spread throughout the entire Apple Kingdom. The rumor tells of a newly discovered gold mine on the border shared by the rival Lion Bloom and Gold Pixie families. To settle ownership, the two families, who were never on good terms, have planned a duel between low-class knights for the mine. Damien already knows the outcome of this duel from his past life. He remembers the result, an overwhelming and decisive victory for the Lion Blooms. Following their win, House Lion Bloom's power expanded rapidly, while the Gold Pixie's influence waned. Damien concludes that if he helps the Duke win the duel, he can finally repay his debt. He also realizes this is his chance to keep the powerful Leon Bloom family in check. Impressed, the long-haired noble calls Damien ambitious and asks if he truly defeated the Lion Blooms' second son and destroyed a large organization. Damien coolly confirms with a smile that the stories aren't just rumors. A knight with a ponytail scoffs, questioning who could possibly fight the eldest Leon Bloom son. The long-haired noble questions if Damien can truly defeat the Lion Bloom heir, who is known to be a genius. As Damien begins to boast of his skill, the skeptical knight interrupts, warning his grace not to trust Damien. The knight argues that rumors are always exaggerated, though the long-haired noble admits Damien's words hold merit. The middle-class knight, Ernst Howitz, insists that Miss Chelsea will find the perfect candidate for the duel. Another knight agrees, adding that Miss Chelsea has been gone a month searching for a warrior to face Michael Lionbloom. Sir Howitz and his fellow knights stand united in their conviction, confident in their own methods. Ugh, TSK, Damien scoffs in annoyance, seeing the knights are ruining his plans. The long-haired noble tests Damien, asking what he should do now that his people have voiced their dissent. Damien declares that the knights are all gravely mistaken, shocking them into silence. He boldly states they must choose him as their proxy, claiming anyone Miss Chelsea finds will be inferior, which infuriates the knight. To prove his worth, Damien challenges the knight to hit him with his ultimate attack, leaving the warrior stunned. With a menacing grin, Damien promises that if he can block the knight's best attack, his value will be proven, enraging his opponent. Sir Howitz asks for permission to teach the arrogant boy a lesson, and the long-haired noble agrees, finding the situation interesting. With a smirk, the long-haired noble gives his full permission for the duel. In a wide courtyard, Damien and Sir Howitz face each other, prepared for battle. Damien's young attendant runs up in a panic, but Damien calmly tells him to stay back, saying it just happened. As Sir Howitz channels a fiery aura, the attendant worries that his master is the one in grave danger. At his master's command, Sir Howitz acknowledges the order to begin. Sir Howitz condescendingly offers to forgive Damien if he gets on his knees and begs. Damien watches the attack come, thinking that as long as he knows where it's aimed, it won't be difficult to counter. With a grunt, Damien summons a vortex of energy on his sword, bracing for impact. Yawn. Damien dismisses him tiredly, telling him to get started, which the knight interprets as a death wish. Sir Howitz channels powerful blue energy into his weapon, preparing to unleash his ultimate attack. Damien calmly watches, wondering if he might have provoked his opponent a little too much. Roaring with fury, Sir Howitz lunges forward, vowing to pierce a hole through Damien's sickening face. Damien watches the attack come, thinking that as long as he knows where it's aimed, it won't be difficult to counter. Damien gathers energy into his sword, creating a shield to block the incoming blow. The glowing blue spearhead and Damien's energy-infused sword are moments from impact. As the ground cracks from the force of the collision, Sir Howitz grits his teeth. The knight grins maniacally, taunting Damien for falling for his trap. Idiot. The initial attack was a feint. The real blow, a dark spike, suddenly impales Damien's shoulder. Horrified, Damien's attendant and the nobles scream out his name as he's struck. Whoosh. The force of the knight's attack pushes Damien back, but he holds his ground. No way, Sir Howitz stares in disbelief, shocked that Damien somehow endured his surprise attack. Ha! The long-haired noble sighs, watching the outcome with his guard knight, Gale Heimlich. With a confident smirk, Damien points his sword and asks if the representative position is his now. Hyok! Damien's attendant screams his master's name, as Damien suddenly grabs him and coughs up blood, using him as a support. Damien reassures his panicking attendant, telling him not to worry because he knew something was going to happen. Clap! Clap! The long-haired noble applauds, remarking that it's incredible Damien endured Sir Howitz's attack. The noble admits he was doubtful, but now sees that Damien is truly capable and has something ready. Addressing his vassals, the noble declares that Damien Haxon has proven his ability and is now their representative as promised. Sir Howitz tries to object, but the noble cuts him off with a sharp enough, warning him not to spoil his good mood. Standing alone, Damien wonders how this happened, as he was certain the attack was going to land on him directly. Sir Howitz watches Damien, realizing he isn't untalented, but simply met the wrong match, as the Duke is treating him badly. Damien smirks, recognizing that his own level has already surpassed the middle-class tier. He replays the feint in his mind, acknowledging it was incredible acting that would fool anyone. He realizes that if he hadn't used mana to block the real attack, it would have been genuinely dangerous. Damien and the long-haired noble face each other in a moment of silent understanding. The long-haired noble slides a glowing blue ring onto his finger. He opens a subspace magic portal, stunning Damien with the rare tool. Pulling out an ornate box, he offers it to Damien as a present. Inside are golden balance pills, which the noble says he paid a hefty sum for. Damien thinks, jackpot. The noble explains the pills help with internal injuries, and Damien accepts them with thanks. Patting his shoulder, the noble says he looks forward to Damien's future work. Damien smiles confidently and replies, "Yes, sir." Elsewhere, in a grand hall, Damien is seen training alone. The scene shifts to the grand gold pixie ducal estate. In a training hall, Damien stretches, feeling refreshed. He notes the supplement worked wonders, healing his internal injuries overnight. Looking around, Damien marvels at the duchy's high-quality training tools. He smiles, ready to begin his training with the advanced equipment. A voice from above asks, "Are you Damien Haxon?" Damien looks up to see a purple-haired boy standing on a ledge to appear taller. Damien confirms his identity, and the boy introduces himself as Pabel Bermond, a low-class knight. Pabel proudly introduces two larger men behind him as his blood brothers. With a cocky pose, Pabel and his companions announce they are also knights participating in the duels. Pabel points at Damien, explaining they were training outside yesterday, and adds, "Lucky you." His tone turns serious as he warns Damien not to drag them down in the duel that holds the duchy's fate. The group tries to shoo Damien away so they can train, but he walks off with a dismissive, whatever. As Damien watches from a distance, Pabel orders his men into position, eager to show off his abilities and confirm the duchy's strength. Hup A Knight begins his training routine. Two knights announce their secret moves, Immovable Akalanatha and Ascending Phoenix, as they prepare to spar. The two knights clash their wooden swords in a flurry of blows. The knights trade taunts, one vowing to win their 487th battle as they remain locked in a struggle. Cuke. The intense sparring match continues across the training grounds. Hop Pabel unleashes a powerful overhead strike against his opponent. Crack! He smashes his wooden sword down on his sparring partner's head. The defeated knight sweats, admitting Pabel's skill is impressive as always. Pabel grins, bruised but victorious. Pabel compliments his partner's improvement, while the partner bows, acknowledging he learned something new. The third, larger knight excitedly steps forward, itching for a fight and asking to battle Pabel next. The three knights huddle, confident that with their training they can defeat the Lion Blooms and bring honor to the duchy. A hand firmly grips a wooden sword, ready for training. Pabel and his two companions raise their swords in a spirited cry. "One for all!" The trio shares a moment of deranged, overconfident laughter. Damien and his attendant, Victor, watch the display from a distance, unimpressed. Victor asks who the strange knights are, while Damien has a grim realization. We're fucked. Damien tells a confused Victor they're screwed for the duel, clenching his fist in frustration. He declares he has no confidence in winning the duel alongside those idiots. The long-haired noble laughs heartily, remarking that certain behavior isn't befitting of a high-class knight. The noble presses his guard knight, Gale Heimlich, for his honest opinion, but Gale insists he isn't bothered. In a flashback, Damien politely declines the noble's offer to train together, preferring to work alone. Back in the present, The noble laughs, telling Jael that Damien Haxon is certainly an interesting person. The noble turns to his guard knight and directly asks for his thoughts on Damien. Jael praises Damien as an exceptional man, recalling his incredible feat of blocking Sir Howitz's strike with mana. The noble leans back in his office, asking Jael to assess their odds of defeating House Leonbloom, but Jael admits it is difficult to say. Jael explains that since victory requires 2 wins, Damien's strength alone might not be enough, a point the noble concedes. The noble asks if their other knights are training properly, and Jael assures him that Sir Vincenzo is handling it. Jael confidently states there's nothing to worry about as the scene shifts to a peaceful, sunlit day. Leaf lands on Damien's cheek as he realizes he's facing an unexpected and serious problem. Watching the knights spar, Damien internally scoffs at their terrible form, concluding they are certain to lose. With a weary sigh, Damien decides he has no choice but to intervene, leaving Victor confused. "Hey, you 3 punks over there," Damien calls out, getting the attention of Pable's group. As one of the knights bristles at being called a punk, Damien cracks his knuckles and suggests a sparring match. Pable smirks, thinking Damien is gutsy to challenge them after witnessing their supposed skills. Pable accepts the challenge, but Damien clarifies that he doesn't want to fight just one of them. With cocky grin, Damien beckons all 3 knights to come at him at once. The trio is stunned into silence by his blatant arrogance. "What?" The knights erupt in fury, calling Damien an arrogant brat. Pable declares that while it goes against the knight's code, dealing with a mad dog requires a different approach. Yelling that a beating is the best fix, all 3 knights rush Damien simultaneously. Damien remains perfectly calm and still as 3 fists fly toward his face. A moment of confusion flashes through one of the attacking knights' minds. Huh? In the next instant, Pable is already on the ground, completely dazed. Pable sits up, shocked to see his companions also defeated, wondering what just happened. All 3 knights lie unconscious on the floor as Pable stares in disbelief. Teask Damien stands over them with his arms crossed, calling them pathetic as his attendant panics in the background. Pable struggles to comprehend how they, the Duke's knights, were defeated, only remembering the attack before blacking out. A flashback shows the 3 knights launching their coordinated attack on Damien. In the flashback, Damien effortlessly dodges and parries their sloppy blows. A simple, effortless block stops an incoming punch cold. With glowing eyes, Damien casually deflects all their attacks with ease. The flashback concludes with Damien standing victorious over his defeated opponents. Pable's face contorts with rage and humiliation. Damien lands a devastating punch squarely on Pable's jaw. The force of the blow sends spit flying as Pable's head snaps back. A final, powerful kick sends the last conscious knight flying. Dazed, Pable realizes in horror that Damien single-handedly overwhelmed all 3 of them. Damien dusts off his shoulder, coolly stating he didn't even break a sweat. Towering over the defeated trio, Damien demands to know who has been training them. A terrified Pable stammers that they are being trained by Sir Sebastian Vincenzo, a mid-class knight. Damien internally criticizes Sir Vincenzo's methods, but hesitates to intervene directly to avoid conflict. Taking charge, Damien orders a shocked Pable to spar with him daily after his regular training. Pable expresses concern, worrying Sir Vincenzo will become suspicious if they constantly appear beaten up. Damien grins devilishly, promising that no matter how hard he hits them, they won't have a single scratch. The 3 knights realize, in astonishment, that despite the thrashing, they are physically unharmed, and wonder how it's possible. With an intense gaze, Damien reveals that he learned a very specific and apparently terrifying way to beat people. A flashback begins, telling of a man who roamed the continent reforming criminals with his unique methods. His method of reform was brutally simple, shown by a powerful fist looming over a bound captive. The first step of his method was to beat his target for an hour straight. If that didn't work, he would double the duration, with one legendary beating lasting 512 hours. Over time, this character corrector began to pity his bloodied victims, and wondered if there was a better way. A close-up reveals the grim determination on the character corrector's face. Through this process, he mastered a new technique, the traceless strike. Damien explains that this secret art, which he just used, inflicts intense pain without leaving any visible marks. He coldly asks if they now understand just how weak and worthless they truly are. Offering a sliver of hope, Damien reminds them they have a month before the duel. He confidently promises to transform them from useless bugs into valuable assets in that time. As Damien prepares to begin their training, the Duke's attendant rushes in, calling his name. The attendant breathlessly informs Damien that he has been summoned by his grace. An attendant announces the dramatic return of a woman in red and black, Lady Chelsea. The woman, Chelsea, greets the long-haired noble, addressing him as her father. Kneeling before the Duke, Chelsea Gold Pixie, his eldest daughter, formally announces she has returned. Jael Heimlich welcomes Miss Chelsea back, noting she has returned safe and sound. In the Duke's office, Chelsea asks her father if he has found a proxy knight for their duel. The Duke affirms that he has, while Chelsea looks on with a sly, confident smirk. The Duke is momentarily stunned as a massive, intimidating knight rises from a kneeling position. The knight bellows his introduction. He is Guillermo Blackwing, the wild beast, a low-class knight. Sir Howitz and another knight recognize Guillermo as a famous mercenary. They recall that during the Aclaring Kingdom's war, Guillermo massacred all the low-class knights he faced. The Duke muses that he's heard no low-class knight is capable of defeating him. The Duke acknowledges Guillermo's fearsome reputation, which flatters the mercenary immensely. Chelsea proudly announces that Sir Guillermo has sworn loyalty to her and will participate in the duel. With a confident smile, Chelsea declares that Guillermo is strong enough to defeat Michael Lionbloom. The Duke's men agree, stating that while Michael Leon Bloom is on the path to perfection, Sir Guillermo has already achieved it. The Duke appears conflicted, muttering that while this is good news, the situation has become difficult. When Chelsea questions him, the Duke cuts her off, stating he hasn't introduced his own representative yet. A tense silence falls as Chelsea and Jael Heimlich exchange a sharp, confrontational stare. Jael announces the Duke's chosen representative, revealing Damien Haxon standing confidently in the doorway. Chelsea furiously demands an explanation, but her father coolly replies that he never agreed to wait for her choice. She insists he change the representative, but the Duke dismissively says he will think about it. Enraged, Chelsea screams that he shouldn't even have to think, dismissing Damien as a complete nobody. She scoffs that Sir Guillermo is the obvious choice over some no-name knight, as Guillermo smirks condescendingly at Damien. No, the Duke says flatly, acknowledging Guillermo's renown but making his decision clear. The Duke declares that Sir Damien is strong enough to block Sir Howitz's ultimate attack, causing Howitz to tremble with indignation. Chelsea accuses her father of hypocrisy, but he sternly rebukes her for speaking so rudely in front of guests. Ha! Chelsea laughs dismissively, blaming her long journey for her behavior, as Damien notes their clear animosity. The Duke ends the argument, dismissing them by saying he will discuss the matter with others first. Coo-ha-ha-ha! Guillermo suddenly erupts into wild laughter, leaving the Duke completely baffled. Guillermo boldly suggests they settle things like men without words, which startles Chelsea. Watching the spectacle, Jael Heimlich quietly condemns Guillermo's behavior as rude. Sir Guillermo aggressively suggests that the strongest, determined by a fight, should be the representative. Chelsea reacts with shock to Guillermo's outburst, but the Duke calmly considers the proposal, admitting Guillermo isn't wrong. The Duke asks for Damien's opinion, who realizes it's a test and agrees that the strongest should fight, but that a fight isn't necessary. Guillermo looks at Damien with confusion, caught off guard by his response. Damien steps forward and calmly proposes they decide who is stronger right here and now. Kuhahaha. Guillermo mockingly threatens to rip off Damien's arm, to which Damien replies with a dry how terrifying. With a menacing smirk, Damien says he'll be nice and only dislocate Guillermo's shoulder. Damien finishes his threat with a vulgar, dismissive grin, revealing his true intentions. With glowing red eyes, Guillermo lunges to grab Damien, who meets his gaze with equal intensity. In an instant, Damien effortlessly flips the much larger Guillermo over his shoulder. Slam! Damien throws Guillermo to the ground with immense force. The Duke, Jael Heimlich, and a blonde knight stare in absolute shock at the sudden takedown. Chelsea stammers in disbelief, unable to comprehend what just happened to her champion. The Duke looks on, with a grimly impressed expression, acknowledging the display was amazing. An internal monologue explains that Guillermo grabbed first, but Damien, with glowing eyes, used his opponent's strength against him. The recap concludes that Damien used Guillermo's own momentum to throw him onto the floor. Damien smirks, noting that he is not only strong but also skilled. The Duke glares furiously. muttering a curse under his breath. Pinned to the floor, Guillermo seethes with humiliation, asking how Damien dares to do this to him. Damien remarks that Guillermo is sturdier than expected, as Guillermo, consumed by rage, vows to shred him to pieces, his axe glowing with dark energy. Roaring, Guillermo swings his glowing purple axe in a furious arc toward Damien. Chelsea screams Sir Guillermo's name in a panic. Howling with rage, Guillermo brings his glowing axe down, vowing to crack Damien's skull open. The furious assault continues, as Guillermo shouts that he will crush Damien's skull. A powerful clash of purple and green energy erupts between the two combatants. "Stop!" the Duke shouts, unleashing a wave of green energy to halt the fight, his expression furious as he asks, "You dare?" An old guard in a skeletal mask materializes, asking Guillermo if he wants to die for brandishing his weapon before the Duke. Keiko. Overwhelmed by the guard's immense pressure, Guillermo is forced to his knees. Damien coolly assesses the guard's power, acknowledging his high-class status is well-deserved. The old guard announces he will let the transgression slide just once, out of consideration for Lady Chelsea's honor. With a final warning, the old guard tells Guillermo there will be no second chances. Guillermo kneels, panting heavily from the exertion and pressure. The Duke cracks his knuckles, clearly displeased with the turn of events. Jael Heimlich smirks, casually remarking on the private commotion that just occurred. Looking at the scene, Jael declares it would be best for Sir Damien to remain the representative. The knight with the blonde ponytail, Sir Ernst, objects loudly, claiming the fight wasn't fair. Sir Ernst argues that Guillermo was exhausted from his journey, giving Damien an unfair advantage, which internally annoys Damien. Chelsea latches onto Ernst's excuse, demanding a proper, official duel to fairly compare their abilities. The Duke sternly tells Chelsea to stop forcing the issue, but she yells back at him in defiance. The Duke slams his fist on the desk, silencing Chelsea by yelling at her to stop bragging about her incompetence. Humbled and defeated, Chelsea turns away, admitting she was rude. Sir Ernst grimaces in frustration as Chelsea backs down. Bowing to the Duke, Chelsea formally apologizes for her behavior. Damien raises his hand and asks to speak, catching everyone's attention. He mentions an offer, leaving a stunned Chelsea to wonder what he means. The Duke looks at Damien, waiting for him to elaborate. Later, Victor questions why Damien accepted the duel, but Damien brushes him off, saying he has his reasons. Damien and Victor arrive at the smithy the Duke mentioned. In a flashback, the Duke offers to have a new sword made for Damien, who, while confident he doesn't need it, decides to accept the kindness. Inside, a smith with a bandana looks up from his work, surprised by their presence. Damien's attendant, Victor, informs a smith that they are here on Duke Goldpixie's orders to retrieve Damien's sword. The smith leads them deeper into the armory to see the weapons. Victor is awestruck by the gleaming, high-quality weapons on display. Damien playfully asks Victor if he wants a weapon, and Victor excitedly asks if he can pick an expensive one. Damien's eyes fall on a particular sword in a case, recognizing its distinctive design. The smith confirms it's a unique sword as Damien examines it closely. The smith explains the sword was a custom order, but its owner left in an emergency before it was finished. Damien intensely asks if the sword was made with unified ringing steel. He recalls the weapon's form is like that of a legendary master from the past, the sword musician. Damien decisively chooses the unique sword, surprising the smith who questions his choice of metal. Unlike normal rare metals, this one has a special property. The unified ringing steel pushes mana into waves as Damien asks for the sword's name. The smith explains it was never named, as its original owner never returned to claim it. A woman's voice interrupts, asking Sir Damien if he found a weapon to his liking. A maid with glasses introduces herself as Rebecca, a servant of Lady Chelsea. Rebecca relays Lady Chelsea's request for a meeting, but Damien flatly refuses. Rebecca slyly suggests her lady has more to discuss than he might think. Realizing she's trying to appease him, Damien decides to play along and see what she wants. Damien agrees with a wry smile, telling Rebecca to lead the way. Rebecca leads him to a grand restaurant, explaining that Lady Chelsea operates it herself. As they walk through the opulent hall, she mentions it's a reservation-only establishment for nobles. She reveals the entire restaurant was empty just for his arrival, and Damien remains silent. Rebecca gestures toward a private room, informing him that Chelsea is waiting inside. Peeking in, Damien wonders what kind of offer Lady Chelsea could possibly have for him. He's suddenly hit by a powerful, familiar scent and recognizes the danger. Entering the room, Damien is told he's a bit late by an unseen speaker. The room is filled with a sinister purple aura as Chelsea tells him to hurry and sit. With an alluring smile, Chelsea formally greets Sir Damien Haxon. After they sit, Damien asks why he was summoned, but Chelsea suggests they talk after their meal. Damien stares back, his patience clearly wearing thin. He dismisses her suggestion, demanding she stop wasting his time and state her business. Chelsea relents, stating she has only one condition for him. With a cold stare, she demands that he step down as the family's representative. Damien questions her trust in Guillermo Blackwing, but Chelsea dismisses him as nothing compared to her knight. She clarifies she is making the demand to preserve her knight's strength for the more important duel. Damien points out the flaw in her logic, but internally admits she has a point about avoiding pointless injury. Asking what's in it for him, Damien is promised his every wish if he agrees. Chelsea arrogantly assumes he wants money and fame, which prompts an internal scoff from Damien. Damien questions why he'd need her help, but she tempts him with the favor of the future Duke. Leaning over an hourglass, Chelsea's eyes glow as she pushes him to align with her. She confidently orders him to go to her father now. With a surge of purple energy, she commands him to announce he is stepping down. Damien sits perfectly still, completely unfazed by her magical pressure. With a confident smirk, Damien calmly refuses her offer. Chelsea recoils in shock, stammering that his refusal isn't how things were supposed to go. Damien grins, realizing she's surprised he was unaffected by her charm fragrance. The charm fragrance is revealed to be a type of dark magic that manipulates people through false affection. Damien explains that because of his dark magic knowledge from a past life, he sensed it immediately. He knew what she was up to the moment he entered the room. He coolly notes that at this concentration, her spell would normally enslave anyone within an hour. Damien reveals his authority of greed completely absorbed her dark magic. Zap Chelsea leaps to her feet, shocked, demanding to know what he means. Flustered, she asks why he's rejecting her when she offered him everything he could want. Damien turns away, stating he doesn't need her help because what he wants is something she can't give. Chelsea furiously demands to know what it is that he wants so badly. He quietly declares that his goal is his family's happiness. Chelsea is stunned into silence by his unexpected and pure motivation. Announcing his departure, Damien tells her to warn Guillermo Blackwing to prepare well for their duel. He pauses at the door, leaving her to stare after him in disbelief. Slam. Chelsea angrily threatens to send someone after him if he doesn't step down as representative. Her eyes glow with malevolent purple energy as she vows to completely crush House Haxon. Keiku. In a flash, Damien appears and chokes her, shocking her with his audacity. Pinning her to the floor, Damien's eyes glow menacingly as she desperately tells him to let go. Hearing the commotion, 2 guards burst into the room to investigate the loud noise. Seeing the scene, a guard charges forward, enraged that Damien would dare lay hands on Lady Chelsea. Cough. Damien releases Chelsea, striking her with a traceless blow as she gasps for air. With glowing eyes, he effortlessly dodges the guard's swords with swift, fluid movements. The charging guard stares in wide-eyed disbelief at Damien's speed. Oogudge. Argia. Damien incapacitates both guards, leaving them groaning in pain as he walks away. He coolly informs them the cuts are shallow and they won't die if they use a potion. He addresses the shocked woman on the floor by her full name, Chelsea Goldpixie. As her guards lie defeated, he tells her to look forward to her coming punishment. Damien departs with a chillingly sinister grin. Left alone, Chelsea trembles with rage and fear, clutching her throat. She stares at the empty doorway, her defeated guards collapsed on the floor. The maid, Rebecca, rushes in, shocked at the scene. Rebecca hurries to her mistress's side, asking if Lady Chelsea is all right. Seething with pure hatred, Chelsea vows that she will kill Damien for insulting her. She furiously screams for someone named Mustang Fury. A portly man in a blue robe, Mustang Fury, dashes in, announcing he came as called. Chelsea demands to know why her charm fragrance failed, and Rebecca suggests Damien may have a natural immunity. You fool, Chelsea smacks Mustang Fury, who cries out in pain. Q. She demands to know Guillermo's whereabouts, and Mustang Fury reveals he's at a tavern. Enraged, Chelsea calls Guillermo a madman for drinking the day before the duel. She furiously questions Mustang Fury, who insists Guillermo is a Yulon masterpiece who can defeat Damien. Mustang Fury pleads for patience, promising that his faction, Yulon, will ensure she inherits the dukedom. With a menacing glare, Chelsea warns him to keep his word, or he will die first. Mustang Fury nervously promises to keep her threat in mind. The scene shifts to Damien standing atop a large window, looking out over the city at sunset. With a cruel smile, Damien muses that she should look forward to just how horrible things will get for her.